considering the roughly 25,000 residents and tourists, most of them heading west into BC, the lucky ones finding a spare hotel room, others sleeping in campgrounds and evacuation centers. A stressful and dramatic experience.
We slept for a few hours in the car, and now we're probably just going to try and continue our vacation towards Banff.
Couldn't believe it. We'd planned for this trip for about 4 or 5 months.
So far, officials say no buildings have been damaged from the out-of-control wildfires. But with so much smoke, it's hard to tell, says Katie Ellsworth, incident commander with Parks Canada.
We are still assessing the impacts to the infrastructure in the South wildfire, and we do hope in the coming days with some cooler temperatures and hopefully some rain that we'll have some clear air and some breathing room, frankly.
Many of the Jasper evacuees are already heading back towards Alberta through the southern part of the province. Kyle Bax, CBC News, Kamloops.
The Canadian Olympic Committee says it is sending 2 members of Soccer Canada home from the Olympics. This follows an allegation of spying from New Zealand's women's soccer team. Canada's women's team was accused of spying on its first Olympic competitor. New Zealand's team complained that Canada's soccer staff member used a drone to record New Zealand's training session. A non-accredited member of Soccer Canada was detained by French police. After a COC investigation, that member, as well as an assistant coach, are being sent back to Canada. The Canadian women's head coach, Bev Priestman, will remove herself from coaching tomorrow's match with New Zealand. The COC has apologized to New Zealand. This is a developing story. Stay with CBC News for more as we get it. Israel's prime minister will deliver an address to U.S. lawmakers today. Benjamin Netanyahu is hoping to bolster support for his country's war against Hamas, but pressure is mounting on Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza. The CBC's Caroline Bargut joins me now from Washington. And Caroline, what are we expecting today?
Well, we're actually expecting thousands of people to attend. I've been in Washington for about a week, and every day I walk around the city and I see posters, and they look like wanted posters, and they have Benjamin Netanyahu's face on them. And the posters are basically saying that he's wanted for war crimes against humanity, and they're calling on people to gather at the Capitol building today at 11. Yesterday, my cameraman and I went and walked around the Capitol building just to see where the protesters might be, and we saw so many barricades. We also saw a ton of police officers, and we talked to police, and they said the protesters won't get anywhere near the Capitol building. Although yesterday, hundreds of Jewish protesters were actually arrested in a government building nearby. They want Netanyahu to sign a ceasefire deal in order to release the hostages. In January, there were 400,000 people who gathered in Washington to protest the war between Israel and Hamas. I was reading this morning that people are traveling from other states, from California and Michigan, to be here. So if it's anything like the January protest, we expect it to be pretty big.
Not everyone plans to attend today's speech. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, U.S. lawmakers are really divided on whether Netanyahu should have been invited to address Congress. Many Democrats feel that Israel, under Netanyahu's guidance, has taken a really heavy-handed approach to the war. Now, Senator Elizabeth Warren is one of many Democrats who says she will not be there today.
I'm not going because Benjamin Netanyahu has led that region into a complete humanitarian disaster. He has put his own personal interests ahead of the interests of the people of his country, and what he has done in Gaza is unspeakable.
Now, Vice President Kamala Harris won't be at the speech today, but it's not because she's making a statement. She has a conflict in her schedule, but she and President Joe Biden plan to meet with Netanyahu tomorrow. Netanyahu will address Congress today at 2.
All right. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
The CBC's Caroline Bargut in Washington. 1 in 3 children and vulnerable adults in New Zealand's care homes were abused. That is the finding from a public inquiry in the country's state and church care. The 3,000-page report details accounts of torture, rape, and sterilization. It says about 200,000 people were subject to abuse between 1950 and 2019. The inquiry also found those from the Indigenous Maori community were especially vulnerable. Moyapulu Frances Tangalo was one of the 2,300 survivors who shared her story with the inquiry.
I suffered from depression at different times. the trauma of the memories of abuse, they live with you just all the time, and you can get triggered by the simplest of things every day.
The report was put forward in New Zealand's Parliament this morning. It includes 138 recommendations. The government is now promising reforms to the system. A formal apology to survivors is expected in November. The Bank of Canada expected to announce a cut in interest rates today. Any drop would be welcome news for Canadians hoping to buy a home. Senior business reporter Anis Hadari has more.
I mean, it makes a big difference for us personally, and I think same for a lot of people in our generation.
Amy Grimble is in her mid-30s and wants to buy a home. She's just waiting for interest rates to drop again.
For my situation personally, it's the difference between maybe looking at a condo in a different area versus something like my neighbor's house here that is still in my neighborhood that I love so much.
Her wish for a cheaper mortgage will probably come true, at least a bit. Most economists predict the Bank of Canada will drop interest rates by 25 basis points. That's 0.25%. If it happens, the central bank's trend-setting policy rate will be 4.5%.
So I'd agree with the market and with the broad consensus on this.
David Doyle is head of economics with Macquarie Group in Toronto. He expects to see interest rates drop, but not just because inflation is lower than this time last year.
For Bank of Canada, it's no longer just about inflation. I think increasingly there will be concerns about growth, and in particular, the undesirable rise in unemployment.
Many economists expect even more interest rate cuts to come this year, but that's less of a sure bet. If rates are cut today, it'll be the second cut in as many months. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
A major Canadian-U.S. border crossing is one step closer to reality. Dignitaries are meeting this afternoon at the halfway mark of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. It connects Windsor, Ontario to Detroit, Michigan. Today's meeting will officially mark the joining of the Canadian and American sides of the bridge. Katie Nicholson has more from Windsor.
I think it will become an icon, one of those postcard moments.
From a lookout in a Windsor park, architect Dorian Moore takes in the towering spires and network of cables of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, reaching across the Detroit River.
To connect both culturally and economically on both sides.
And it almost never happened. Matty Maroon, the billionaire who owned the Ambassador Bridge, the other bridge which has connected Windsor and Detroit for nearly a century, fought tooth and nail against the project.
Dear Mr. President.
He even paid for an ad on Fox and Friends in 2018 asking then-President Trump to stop the Canadian-funded project.
Revoke that presidential permit and let the grand new span be American.
It didn't work. Today, community leaders will be allowed to see it for themselves. Rakesh Naidu is the president of the Windsor-Essex Chamber of Commerce. He says the new bridge will be a big economic driver.
This is one of the busiest commercial crossings in North America. About $400 million of goods crosses the border every day. It's a lifeline for Canada.
The bridge isn't slated to open until September of 2025, so today, when Naidu walks the deck straddling two countries, he's looking forward to one thing.
Selfies.
Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. My colleague, Abby Adeyemi, just putting on his yellow shades, getting ready for the day. You're going to need him over there, Abby, because sunny for the day and hot, really hot. A high of 26 with humidex 32. Is what we're expecting for this Wednesday, July 24th. Thanks for joining us. This hour on the program, we're going to be talking about Paris. Preparations continue, but specifically security. What's that going to look like as opening ceremonies roll down the Seine? So we'll talk about it. In addition, as an act of precaution in northern Manitoba, First Nation has started evacuating some community members due to a nearby wildfire. We will hear more about those efforts from Marcel Colombe First Nation. So stay tuned for that. And our medical column this hour is really interesting. He's going to talk about getting the most out of your next doctor's visit. That is Raj Bhardwaj, our columnist, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj. And what he means by that is, how do you talk to your doctor? Do you come in with questions, concerns? How do you frame it? I always hate when the doctor says to you, how painful is it? How do you describe that to the doctor to make sure that you get the care you need? So stay tuned. That's the medical column just before 7. Right now, 6:11 a.m. and Heather Wells is here with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. A Portage la Prairie man says his life is ruined after RCMP wrongfully charged him in a child exploitation case. Scott Joseph Taylor was charged earlier this month with obtaining sexual services of a minor. He was among 6 men who were charged, but 10 days later, RCMP released an update saying Taylor was not involved. But Taylor demands an apology. We're going to hear what he says has happened to him because of that wrongful accusation. And a firearms expert in Winnipeg says the growth in 3D printed guns is a big concern. Winnipeg police say a 25-year-old man was directing the production and trafficking of printed handguns from his cell at Stony Mountain Institution. We're going to hear from that expert coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, Corey Funk, we have to pay homage to. Good morning, first of all.
Good morning.
We have to pay. We have to. Is it pay homage? That's not the right thing to say. We have to give props to Abby over there.
I feel like I have to squint when I look at him.
Yeah,
He's just so bright this morning.
If you're on YouTube, you're getting a treat right now. We got to switch. I don't know if we can see him because we got him up. There he is. Look at this. It's the annual rubber ducky shirt. It's like literally covered in the bright yellow duckies. And you got matching shades this morning, Abby.
Yeah,
I'm
because
liking it.
that's the mood for today. Rubber ducky and, a matching shade.
I like it. I had a friend once say that shades you should never take too seriously. Your shade should always be just a little bit silly.
Yeah,
and
true.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, let it go.
Yeah.
Take it.
So today I mentioned really hot today, right?
Yeah, really hot. It's going to look like one of those rubber ducky days. You just want to spend some time in a cool splash pad. We will start off at 15 currently in the city. We'll see some sunny conditions start the day. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds near the noon period. Expect some breezy conditions, but that would not be like the cool one. It's going to be warm due to the humidity. We're going to get to a high of 26, though with the humidity factored in, it will be feeling like 32 today. So it's one of those days you need your shades because the sun is going to be really, really in your face. And tonight we'll see some few clouds, but it's still going to stay humid, and we'll just try to drop to 20. Now we have heat warnings down south impacting areas in the Dauphin corner of the province, affecting Boissevain, Turtle Mountain, Provision Park, all the way down to Verdun, Russell, Roblin, Minnedosa, and Riding Mountain National Park. Now, these regions will be under this extreme heat warning for the next 2 days or so, with daytime temperatures reaching 29 or even higher. And overnight, it's not really going to cool off that much because of the humidex values expected to exceed 38, making it hotter for people in that area. Now, this heat wave, we know it's caused by this high pressure system just lingering over that region. So I'd advise you for the next few days, avoid direct sun, contact with the sun between 11 and 3 p.m., 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. Hats, sunglasses, just hydrate.
All the things.
Hydrate,
yep.
And try to don't leave people, animals in your cars, and farm animals.
All those things. Good reminders.
Once again, Winnipeg, we are at 15 degrees and we are heading to a high of 26.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
What do we need to remind people of in traffic on the commute, Corey?
Really quiet commute out there so far. Haven't heard anything yet. I was actually looking to see, because I know there with the fires around Marcel Colombe, if there's any highway closures, anything like that around Lynn Lake. So far, it doesn't look like there is anything like that. But if you do see something going on, give me a call. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
Some beautiful shots of the sky this morning. It is shrouded once again with a bit of a thin, hazy layer, so it does make the sun coming up look a bit orange, but it sure looks lovely coming up behind the buildings in downtown Winnipeg. Well, during summer, we always like to bring you some encore presentations of our favorite stories. And the first one is Minnie. Our CBC producer, one of our associate producers, Chloe Friesen, in 2023, in the spring of that year, she went to visit some talented miniature makers. She popped into the studio then afterwards to tell us all about a group that calls themselves Meow, which stands for the Miniature Enthusiasts of Winnipeg. What a great assignment.
Oh, amazing.
Just putting it out there. Tell us about Meow.
This is an amazing group. It has around 30 members, all specializing in different materials, items, and scales. They meet once a month in the library of the Commute Center here in Winnipeg, and they use these meetings to chat about upcoming shows, to swap tips and tricks, and mostly just enjoy each other's company. We actually had to pause some of our interviews because the conversation and laughter was just getting so loud.
Always a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
So who did you meet first?
The first person I spoke with is the club's president, Georgina Wood, and I asked her how she got into miniatures.
I always had Barbies, and I was a little embarrassed of collecting Barbies. So I found the club, and they invited me to come to the first meeting. The first 2 meetings are free, and I had to bring my husband because I was shy. Big difference now. That's how it all started.
So what do you specialize in now? Is there a certain scale or?
I specialize in 1/12, and I specialize in upholstered furniture.
Wow, so like tiny couches and
Yes.
sofas and things.
Yeah.
So you heard Georgina say there that she specializes in upholstery, and that's the case for a lot of members, I discovered. People specialize in all sorts of things, like various scales. So common scales I heard about were 1/6, 1/12, 1/24. So this means that whatever item is being made is going to be 1/6 or 1/12 the size of the actual item. So a Barbie doll, for example, is in 1/6 scale, also known as play scale.
How many people are part of the group, part of Meow?
So there's about 50 members, and Georgina says they all generally meet certain criteria.
A lot of our members are older, and they're starting to downsize. So they're just going from 1/12 scale down to quarter scale. Any kind of craft you can do, you can probably downsize to do miniatures.
What sort of reactions do you get when people see your work or see the club's work for the first time?
I laugh. The reactions are funny because people, they can't believe their eyes that we can do something that small and make it look that real. That's it. Mostly surprise and love. People love it.
And love it they do. Crafting competition shows like Best in Miniature on CBC Gem have seen huge popularity.
So what did you see? Obviously, you got to see some miniatures.
I did, lots actually. So many members brought their work to show off, which was all incredible. But there was one piece that immediately caught my eye. It was a teeny tiny cutting board of salmon, tomatoes, and chopped lemons. So I tracked down its creator, Gloria Joe, who specializes in fake food that can fit on your fingertip.
I've always liked making miniature foods, and I like the idea of something not finished, like a prep board.
What other foods have you made in a tiny scale?
A lot. Cakes. I made a turkey platter. I made fish as part of this prep board series that I was working on. Sushi, ramen. I've made ramen where you can like have the chopsticks up, suspended in the air.
I don't even have words because I just want to get in here and stare at it. How do you know when you're done? How do you know when there's enough detail?
When I force myself to stop.
Okay, this is blowing my mini plastic orange from the 80s Barbie set out of the water. Can you describe the detail you guys are talking about there?
It's hard to because it's so mind-boggling. She actually let me pick it up to take a closer look.
It's got like little, what spice would you call that?
I'm not
Like
sure.
oregano,
Like
maybe some like cilantro.
A little herb.
A little herb. It looks delicious. What's the knife made out of?
I hand make them, and I like to recycle a lot. So it's actually from the circle of tea lights, like the metal part.
Oh yeah.
So when I'm done with burning them, I'll cut the metal out of it, and then cut a blade out of it, and then put the wood for the handle.
So there's a lot of like resourcefulness that comes into play.
Yes, I like to recycle and reuse stuff whenever I can.
So that's another theme that I picked up on while talking to club members, that resourcefulness and the recycling when it comes to making miniatures. People were very proud to point out what materials that they used to create their miniatures, like fabric scraps and cardboard boxes. And you have to definitely check out Gloria's work. If you just search Gloria Joe art on Etsy or Facebook, it'll come up. She can really do it all when it comes to making things small.
What else stood out to you about the Miniature Enthusiasts of Winnipeg Club?
Something else I noticed was a few members were wearing these denim aprons embroidered with Meow, Miniature Enthusiasts of Winnipeg, and many of these aprons had pins all over them. I decided to find the person with the most pins, and that would be Carol, who's been part of the club since the beginning, and her apron is loaded with pins.
These are each year, and to earn them, I have to do projects or participate in different ways. I belong to NAME, so I bought theirs.
What is NAME?
National Association of Miniature Enthusiasts.
Does it feel a bit like, like Girl Scout or Boy Scout? They get their pins or their sashes?
Well, some of us get addicted to the miniatures, and then if you are a person who likes to collect, I like to collect.
Why do you like miniatures? Why do you like tiny things?
I'm small, so I've always liked little things, and I didn't really get involved till after I retired. I didn't have time. And now I work in the little tiny scales, because I live in an apartment. I don't have room for the big stuff. Not anymore.
So I asked a lot of people why they loved miniatures, and Carol's answer was definitely my favorite. Because she's small. But I made sure to check if tall people can love miniatures too. It's an important question because I'm about 6 feet tall, and she said that she would make an exception.
I love that. Thanks for bringing us the story. Now, of course, we can't let you go before you mention where people can see this.
Definitely. If you want to see some of these teeny tiny artworks yourself, you can head on over to our YouTube page.
Just joyful. Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you.
CBC's Chloe Friesen speaking with us back in the spring of 2023. This is part of our series of Summer Encores on CBC. As mentioned, you can visit the Miniature Enthusiasts of Winnipeg and their monthly meeting at the CBC Manitoba's YouTube page. You can go back and see that video that was originally created of all of the miniature little works. We'll grab the shades in the water. It's going to be hot in Manitoba today, especially in Winnipeg, sunny and a high of 26. And right now it's mainly sunny already, and it's 15 and winds are calm. I shouldn't say especially in Winnipeg because the southwest corner, in fact, does have a heat warning. It's going to be around for about 2 days. It'll make it feel like it's around minus 38 in that part of the province. Well, speaking of heat, that's one of the things that people have been watching for when it comes to how athletes are going to deal with things in Paris. We're close now. On Friday, of course, the Olympics kick off. Years of planning have gone into the opening ceremony, which is going to happen along the 6-kilometer stretch of the River Seine. Years of planning have also been focused on security. With millions of visitors and thousands of athletes making their way to Paris, we thought we'd look at measures this morning that are in place. And to talk about it, Michael Kempa is with us, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So what are some of the unique security threats and challenges that organizers are going to face in Paris, especially all along the River Seine?
Well, although the Olympics are always meant to be an apolitical event, typically whatever's going on in the world in terms of turmoil and war is projected onto the Olympics. So Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, extremist sympathizers with either side of these causes could go to the Olympics with terror activity in mind. We're likely to see cyber attacks from the state of Russia. We must remember the Russian athletes are not permitted by the Olympic Committee to participate under their flag this time around. So the Russian government anyway, has a bone to pick this time around. And of course, France has political turmoil in terms of their recent election with the extreme left and right at each other's throats. There's concerns that these groups could target the games, not only for protest, but again for terror-type activity.
French officials, to look at the numbers here, Michael, had promised that some 600,000 people would attend the opening ceremony, but now that number has been slashed, and that is because of safety concerns. What are the specific things that might be of concern when you look specifically at opening day?
Well, the River Seine, we're going to have a flotilla of boats coming 6 kilometers along, each state athletes on their own boat. There are tens of thousands of apartment windows looking down on the River Seine. The French security services have been proactive. They've screened who's in the area. People who are in the area are only permitted to be there through use of a QRC code. So we're looking at a situation where people are out in the open, and it's extremely important to maintain surveillance over that entire space.
Have we seen something like this before at the Olympic Games where it would be so open, especially over the airspace? And in this moment, which I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about, where we just weeks ago had an outdoor open rally in the U.S. where there was an attempt on former President Donald Trump's life. Have we seen the Olympics gather in such a way where that risk is so, potential risk is difficult to manage?
Well, certainly we've seen the Olympics be the target of terror activity before, of course, famously in 1972 in Munich, where Israeli athletes were murdered by the extremist group from Palestine at that time. Similar bomb attacks going back to the Atlanta Games and elsewhere. So these are issues that come up every Olympics. It's difficult to imagine a situation where you could have an Olympics without an extreme security event. And certainly this time around in France, it is extreme in terms of number of personnel. We're talking 45,000 police officers on the day of the opening ceremonies itself, 20,000 private security, 10,000 military personnel, and 2,000 police seconded from countries around the world. Drones, snipers in helicopters, a no-fly zone over the city of Paris. The list goes on and on.
What are some of the newest technologies that are being used? Obviously, you may have answered this already when you were just talking about the drones there.
Well, we've long had CCTV surveillance in Paris and elsewhere in the major capitals of the world, cameras everywhere. The difference this time around is these cameras will be operated and essentially watched by artificial intelligence programs that have the ability to scan the environment that much more quickly than the human eye and pick up anomalies. So if crowds are moving strangely or in a potentially dangerous way according to the algorithm, that program will alert the security services on the ground to that situation. Programs can pick up stationary objects, something as small as an envelope on the ground that is not moving. That could be a biological weapon threat. Again, that AI program will pick that up much more quickly than the human eye, and again, direct the security services on the ground. This is unprecedented.
When is too much security a hindrance to the overall, spirit of the games? Is there a line there, do you think?
Well, there is that line. People have argued that we've crossed it in the case of Paris. The businesses, for example, restaurants that are inside that security perimeter, they're essentially unable to operate in that even those who have reservations often arrive and realize they don't have the necessary QR codes to be admitted. One of the major threats of Olympic Games, many would say, is that extraordinary security measures that are introduced under the justification of the Games don't go away after the Games have concluded. Many have argued that Olympics are an opportunity for the state to roll out security approaches that are there to stay.
What will you be watching for when it comes to security as we move through these games, and specifically on Friday, Michael?
Whether or not there will be the technical capacity that is uninterrupted by foreign cyber attack to scan people quickly enough to keep them moving through public space. If people are bogged down and unable to move, crowds of people themselves become the potential targets for terrorist attack. We want to see that the technology keeps people moving.
Thanks for your time this morning. We're all likely going to be watching, I know I am, just to even see what this looks like with the athletes floating down this end. Thanks for your time.
Always. Thank you kindly. That's
Michael Kempa, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Ottawa, talking to us this morning about what the security efforts are looking like ahead of the games, which kick off in Paris on Friday with opening ceremonies. Well, coming up here in Information Radio on CBC Manitoba this morning, we have business news with Crystalie Ramlakan. And today we are awaiting the Bank of Canada interest rate announcement this morning, and we're going to hear more analysis of what business experts are predicting and expecting. Stay tuned for that. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. Sunshine out there. It's going to be a beautiful day. Right now we're at 15. We're headed to a seasonal high of 26. Again, it's going to feel warmer with that humidity, a humidex of 32. Exactly 1 year ago today, Manitoba's former PC government hired a recruitment firm to bring 150 doctors to this province. In that time, not a single doctor has arrived. The province enlisted Canadian Health Labs to recruit the new doctors. NDP Health Minister Uzoma Eseguera says it would cost the current NDP government money to cancel that project, so at least for now they hope the company delivers some doctors.
It's unfortunate they haven't been able to date, but I also want to make sure we're not throwing good money after bad. And we're going to continue to assess this agreement while we take real action and real steps to recruit more doctors to Manitoba.
The province doesn't have to pay any money to the firm until doctors start arriving. Canadian Health Labs is the same firm that has faced blowback in some Atlantic provinces. The Globe and Mail found it was charging $300 an hour for a private nurse, well above what a staff nurse earns. A Portage-la Prairie man says his life is ruined after RCMP wrongfully charged him in a child exploitation case. Scott Joseph Taylor was charged earlier this month with obtaining the sexual services of a minor. This came after a police investigation found teenage girls were being lured and forced to have sex in exchange for drugs. 6 men from Portage-la Prairie, including Taylor, were charged. But 10 days later, RCMP released an update saying Taylor was not involved. Taylor wants police to do a more thorough investigation before announcing any charges.
Before you charge somebody, don't just charge somebody. Make sure you do your job, because this has ruined my life, is what you've done to me. This has ruined my life. This has ruined my family's life.
Taylor says his home has been vandalized and people have threatened his life on social media. RCMP say once they learned Taylor was not involved, they moved quickly to stay the charges. A firearms expert in Winnipeg says the growth of 3D printed guns is a big concern. Winnipeg police say a 25-year-old man was directing the production and trafficking of printed handguns from his cell at Stony Mountain Institution. Police say the man used a smuggled cell phone to get components shipped to addresses in Winnipeg. Firearms specialist Dave Brown explains why 3D printed firearms are especially dangerous.
The frame itself is what usually contains the serial number on legal firearms, and because these ones are illegal, they contain no serial numbers, so they're completely untraceable, and they have only one purpose, and that's to sell to criminals and be used in crimes.
6 other people from the Winnipeg area face charges. About 40 people gathered near a busy Winnipeg intersection last night for a vigil to remember Loretta Moraine Green. The 32-year-old died after being hit by a vehicle on Notre Dame and McPhillips. Family members and friends remembered the mother of 6 as a loving, caring person. Louis Pelche was Green's stepfather.
She was very caring like that, very thoughtful to other people. She wasn't no ounce of violence in her, always happy, smiling. Every time she see her mom, she had big smiles with her all the time.
Some placed flowers, sage, and sweetgrass near the traffic posts. Others held signs with photos of Green. Winnipeg police are investigating. The sentencing hearing for disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard begins today in Toronto. The 82-year-old has been in jail since being arrested in 2020. In November, a Toronto jury found him guilty of 4 counts of sexual assault. The Crown's expected to ask for a 3 to 5 year term in a federal penitentiary. Crown attorney Neville Galwalia says the court will hear victim impact statements.
This is a crime that typically happens in private and profoundly impacts human dignity. To stand up and recount those indignities in a public forum such as a courtroom is never easy and takes great courage.
Nygard also faces numerous sex-related charges here in Winnipeg as well as in Quebec and New York. Officials in Alberta gave an update last night on the wildfire evacuation of Jasper National Park and the town of Jasper. Flames now are burning 12 kilometers south of the town, and officials admit some mistakes were made. There was confusion during the initial evacuation of Jasper Monday night. Richard Ireland is the mayor of the town of Jasper.
This is a dynamic, evolving situation. It has been from the outset. Response will never be perfect.
Reception centers are now open in Calgary and Grand Prairie to help the evacuees. The Canadian Olympic Committee is sending 2 members of the Canadian women's soccer team home from the Paris Games. It follows an allegation Canada used a drone to film a New Zealand training session. A non-accredited member of Soccer Canada was detained by French police, and after an investigation, the team member and an assistant coach are being sent back to Canada. Canada's head coach, Bev Priestman, will remove herself from the sidelines of tomorrow's match against New Zealand. The Canadian Olympic Committee has also issued an apology to the New Zealand team. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And one more thing, the Winnipeg Sea Bears have clinched a playoff spot for a second straight year. Last night, the Sea Bears beat the Calgary Surge 111-104 in front of more than 11,000 fans at Canada Life Centre. The two teams face each other again tomorrow in Calgary. You can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Now let's go into our regional forecast, get the details for the whole province now from Abby Adiemi.
Good morning once again. 16 degrees in Winnipeg. We're seeing the sun try to make an appearance under this smoky cloud we have out there. We should expect more of like a sunny sky for today. Then we'll see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds. It will be breezy. We're going to get to a high of 26, feeling warmer due to the humidity. And for tonight, we'll see those clouds still stay in and then breezy and some strong wind, some winds tomorrow, and we'll get to a high of 30. Brandon is at 15 and mostly cloudy at the moment. We'll see a mix of sun and clouds today, reaching a high of 30. It will be warmer with the humidity, with the humidex at 40. Some breezy conditions expected also, and that would lead into the evening period. Thompson is currently at 8 degrees and partly cloudy. Also, the sun trying to make some appearance. Expect mainly sunny conditions today with some local smoke in the forecast. Highs will reach 27, feeling like 32 with the humidex factored in. Further north in Churchill, it is 15 and partly cloudy at the moment. We're also expecting a mainly sunny day with some clouds rolling in and a slight chance of showers sometime in the day. Expect breezy conditions and high of 28. Down in Dauphin, 14. We're seeing a misty condition at the moment. Today's forecast includes a mix of sun and clouds. The highs would get to 29, and it's even going to feel hotter than that within the range of 30s, close to 38, with the humidex factored in. Now expect a breezy southwest winds with light winds later tonight. We also have that heat warning in effect for the southwestern corner of the province, which includes Dauphin all the way down to Riding Mountain. We have 16 degrees at Gimli at the moment, and it's clear. The Interlake region is expecting sunny conditions today, becoming a mix of sun and clouds, and we get to a high of 26, feeling like 33 later. Steinbach is at 15, heading to 26, and finally Morris, clear at 15. The Pembina Valley region is expecting sunny conditions today, becoming a mix of sun and clouds near noon, and then we will warm up to 26, though it's going to feel hotter than that with the humidex factored in at 33. Just see across the province today, we're seeing a mix of sun and clouds, and the highs would range between 26 and 30s.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
That's a proper summer day in Manitoba. All right, let's get into the morning commute. Quiet so far, Corey?
Quiet so far. Abby did flag from his way in this morning. He was telling me Pembina, northbound Pembina, I believe in the left lane at Markham, there's some construction there, so just look out for that. But other than that, things are running pretty smoothly overall. But if you do see something going on, 204-788-3093.
And I understand you could be a little groggy this morning because you were like in like the VIP box last night in your dreams.
Okay, I told you about my dream, and I think it's actually more of a premonition than anything else.
What did you dream?
So I had a dream that I ran 100K.
Okay, which is actually not unusual. Corey runs these extreme
but then afterwards,
distances.
I had the best time because I went directly to a box seat at the Canada Life Centre to watch the Jets play in the Stanley Cup final, and I was in the box seat eating wings with the Jets families and a couple rappers. There was a couple rappers in there. I don't remember who, but I was like, those guys are definitely rappers.
What did you watch before bed?
I don't even know. I'm trying to think what I watched. I watched Cobra Kai before bed. So I don't think that influenced anything. I don't know. But anyways, that was my dream, and I'm telling you, so mark this date, July 24th.
Okay.
When the Jets are in the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm hoping Mark Chipman's listening, and if they make it to Stanley Cup Finals,
You want to be invited to
he
the
gives me
family
a box
box
seat, and I get some. Yeah, I want to be in the family box
Okay.
with wings after running 100K.
Well, you know what? You have to plan them 100K as well then, which I know you won't shy away from.
Yeah, sure, let's do it.
It's so funny. Bizarre. 20 to 7 right now on CBC. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. As Corey mentioned, middle of the week here, July 24th, getting near the end of the month and a really hot day ahead. Next, let's go to something else that's going to be coming up today, which is interest rates. We are awaiting the latest Bank of Canada interest rate announcement this morning. Of course, CBC will cover it when it comes out and talk about implications. Chrisley Ramlakan is here with business news that relates to that. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy. So yeah, that news is going to be coming out at 8:45 your time there in Winnipeg. And economists are expecting that the Bank of Canada will cut interest rates again by another 1/4 point because inflation has been slowing down. So we'll have to wait and see what they do.
And now let's actually look at the transportation industry in business news this morning and switch gears here because CN Rail is cautious about its business right now. And why is that?
Well, Canadian National Railway earned more than $1 billion in the second quarter, but it has lowered its forecast for earnings growth as it faces the threat of a worker strike. So it had predicted share growth of about 10% this year, but it is lowering that to the single-digit range. So the company says it's revising its forecast because of continued uncertainty in light of a recent move by the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference Union to reject CN's offer to enter into binding arbitration. So this, of course, heightens the risk of a work stoppage. And also, Marcy, the Montreal-based railway says its net income was 5% lower than the year before.
Let's stay with transportation this morning and talk about the hundreds of millions of dollars being invested into aviation in Canada. What's the story you have on that this morning?
Yeah, so Quebec is investing another $413 million into its partnership with Airbus Canada to keep an assembly line of aircraft in the province. So the province is extending its partnership with the airplane maker until 2035. Airbus is set to invest its own $1.2 billion. So together, they're investing $1.65 billion to keep the manufacturing of A220 planes in the province. So the French aerospace giant holds 3/4 of Airbus's shares and Quebec holds the other 1/4. Airbus had planned to buy out Quebec shares in 2030, but the pandemic disrupted the supply chain and a labor dispute slowed production there. So Quebec is hoping that these extra 5 years in the partnership will allow it to recoup its investment. It had initially invested $1 billion in the aircraft in 2016, then known as the C-Series, when it was owned by Bombardier. And then the province invested another $300 million in 2022. Now, the CEO of Airbus says the assembly line has to double its production to 14 planes a month to become profitable now. Airbus does employ 4,000 people there in Quebec, and there's another 18,000 jobs linked to suppliers involved in this project. And the premier says the investment is a lot of money, but Quebec wants quality jobs there in the province. But the Montreal Economic Institute calls the latest investment a waste of money and says it's unlikely Quebec will get a good return on its investment. It says at some point the government will have to realize that it is throwing good money after bad and that it has already lost the bet.
And finally, before we look at the numbers this morning, you have some details on Mattel's latest efforts to boost its Barbie business.
Yes, so it has just unveiled a blind Barbie. So since the doll debuted in 1959, it has generated criticism for unrealistic beauty standards. And in response, Mattel has tried to create versions that are more representative of a broader range of people. So yesterday, the company released a Barbie designed in partnership with the American Foundation for the Blind. The doll comes in a box with Braille lettering, and the doll has a cane and sunglasses for light-sensitive eyes. And she's also dressed in a satin blouse and a ruffled skirt. And Mattel says it tested those fabrics for tactile satisfaction with blind and low vision children. The company also released its first Black Barbie with Down syndrome, which was developed with input from the National Down Syndrome Society. And these dolls are part of a line that launched in 2009 that features dolls with different skin tones, body types, and disabilities. And it appears the company is trying to expand its audience. And that's partly because it just posted another drop in quarterly sales, led by a decline in Barbie sales. But profit at the toy company did rise overall due to higher margins as costs have eased. And the company says it expected Barbie sales to slip following last summer's blockbuster Barbie movie. And so Mattel is hoping that Barbie sales will improve now with new products, more adult-focused streaming content, and added shelf space at retailers in the back half of this year.
How are markets looking this morning? What do we know?
In Europe, markets are lower as investors weigh regional bank and U.S. tech earnings. So Germany, the UK, and France are all down. In Asia, markets are falling as well. So Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is up 77 cents to $77.74 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up $6.20 to $2,413.50 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.04 of a cent to 72.5 cents U.S.
All right. Well, we'll watch for that interest rate announcement and the analysis coming later, as you mentioned. Thanks, Crystalie.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystalie Ramlichan from our business desk this morning. She joins us each and every morning here on Information Radio. 6:46 a.m. on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on that app or on YouTube. And as you may have been hearing in the news, there are some concerns about a fire that's burning in northern Manitoba this morning. Don McCallum says that yesterday throughout the day felt like a normal day until seemingly out of nowhere there was huge clouds of smoke, and it began to from above his community where he lives in Manitoba. He is the Chief Administrative Officer in Marcel Colomb First Nation in northwestern Manitoba. So the smoke was coming from a nearby wildfire. It prompted the community to begin evacuating some residents from the community. About 50 of the 300 people are in the nearby town now of Lynn Lake. And yesterday, when this was all developing, CBC's Chelsea Kemp spoke with McCallum to hear more.
What we're doing right now is we're taking the children and the elders up to the town of Lynn Lake, and the town has graciously gave us the arena to put them up in for the time being for tonight. But it looks like the fire might be under control, but still we don't want to take chances.
Some of the videos are pretty harrowing.
Yeah, like it just picked up this morning. We didn't realize there was we didn't see no smoke or anything. And then all of a sudden, 2 o'clock this afternoon, there was this big, huge smoke going up into the air. I guess we were pretty busy to notice because, I was in the office all day inside. I didn't go out until somebody come running and told me there's a big fire going on over there.
And how soon did you have to get ready for evacuating the kids and the elders?
Well, what we did is we immediately informed the town to come meet at the band office here at the administrative building, just in case. So all the families came. We did it within 2 hours. We went door to door, knocked, and everything got picked up people, and then we made them come and wait here. Just to be sure, just to be safe.
Yeah.
We got all our transportation ready and everything.
Probably helps having everyone at the bound office because then you know everyone.
Yeah, it does. With our emergency management plan, what we do is we have a meeting place, and our band administrative building is the meeting place for all the families to come here and wait. And everybody came here, so that was a good thing.
What's it look like outside now?
Well, I'll just say that it's a lot of smoke. Earlier, before that, you could just you could just see the smoke pillar, and you could see the white cap on top. That tells us that it was a very big fire. But we got 4 water bombers that came in from Thompson, and they're slowly putting it out. And they have a ground crew of 4, and these 4 ground crew ready to attack the flames from the ground.
And you said it seems like it's hopefully a bit more under control now?
Actually, it is under. It seems like it is. It seems to be under control. A lot of smoke, but we don't have much of the smoke, but you can just see it. It's just right there, like a mile away, 2 miles away. It's a bit of wind, and the wind is blowing it the other way, not our way, which is a very good thing. Otherwise, if it was blowing this way towards the town, then we would have definitely had to evacuate, and probably the fire would be right upon us.
Is there anything you have to do tonight just to be ready to evacuate or be ready for anything?
What we do is we got our emergency numbers, and we got about 8 people on security. And to be ready with the phone, we're going to leave our band office open for the night, just so that if there is an emergency, they can contact me or anybody on our that may be part of the program, the emergency management plan. Looks like it might be safe. It might be safe, but you never know when there might be a flare-up, eh? And the wind can change at any time.
Yeah.
That's what we're keeping an eye on. We're keeping an eye on the wind. We'll be on watch, 24/7. Till we know it's very safe.
Don McCallum, Chief Administrative Officer of Marcel Colombe First Nation, in conversation with CBC's Chelsea Kemp. Now, that was yesterday afternoon as things were developing, and 50 people of 300 are in the nearby town of Lynn Lake. They were evacuated from community. We don't have new updates to share with you this morning, but throughout the day, of course, we'll be checking back in to see how people are doing and how the winds are behaving to affect that fire. It is 9 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, and it is Wednesday morning. That means it's time for our medical column this morning. And what's it like when you go to the doctor? Do you have a good conversation with the doctor or the specialist, or do you worry that you didn't actually get the information you needed or ask the questions you needed? Communication is key, and it's the topic of today's medical column with Dr. Raj Bhardwaj.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what's your sense of, I guess, what I shared there a bit, but why do you think it's challenging to sometimes have a good, successful visit?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably as many reasons as there are people, right? This is a communication issue a lot of the time, and anytime we're just, we're people trying to communicate, so things like personality and time pressure and different levels of concern and different communication styles and things can get in the way. Also, we're working on a problem together. We're trying to solve a mystery, manage a problem. That can be complicated. And partly because of that, there's sometimes we're coming at the problem in a slightly different way, and that can be part of the misunderstanding as well. So if you go to the emergency department with chest pain, for example, your primary concern is what's causing this pain. But we might be coming at it just slightly differently. Instead of asking what's causing this pain, we might want to know, is whatever is causing this pain immediately dangerous? We're getting at the same thing, but we're coming at it from a slightly different angle, and that's why we might ask you things like, do you also have jaw pain or back pain, or are you nauseous, or are you lightheaded? And people might be thinking, it's chest pain. I told you, it's not jaw pain, and so they can get kind of frustrated with that. But those are really relevant questions. It's just that we're working the problem in a slightly different way. The other thing to remember is we might have seen a thing 1,000 times, and maybe your condition is a textbook example of that problem. And I think it's easy for doctors to forget that this is a new experience for you. You need our help to sort of guide you through it and take you through it step by step, whereas we're already sort of, way at the end and kind of moving on.
So for the medical appointments that a person can prepare for, what can they do to make the visit more effective?
First of all, I would say you can prepare for almost every medical visit. But remember that a lot of what we do is diagnose people with conditions. And I think that's a process kind of like solving a mystery. And just like a good detective, we want to interview the witnesses and gather the evidence before we decide who done it, so to speak. So one of the most common pieces of advice that I hear is, saying, oh, well, write down your questions before you go see a doctor. And I agree, that's super important. But that's like sort of skipping to the end of the mystery. We want to start at the beginning. We don't want to know your questions right off the bat. I mean, yes, we want to know that so that we can sort of set up the mystery and the context, but we want you to be a good eyewitness. For example, like I see people in the urgent care all the time. They've waited for 3-4 hours to see me. I walk into the room. They say, oh, I've had this foot pain or whatever. I say, okay, well, how long has this been an issue for you? And a lot of times they answer with, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. And I'm like, dude, you're the eyewitness. You're the only one who knows. This is happening to you. So please help us to help you by thinking about it. We need to know, how long has it been bothering you? How did it start? Was it gradual, sudden? What makes it better? What makes it worse? What have you tried
big
that
difference
either did
between,
or didn't work?
Big difference between it started last week and it started a year ago. Mm-hmm.
Or it started 10 minutes ago. Or it started a day ago, but I've had it before. And this is what it was diagnosed as before, or I never saw a doctor before, but this time it's worse. Like, we need to know all of that.
Sometimes the doctor will say, is it painful? And I think, I don't even know how to answer that, because I don't even know how my pain threshold compares to someone else's. And is there helpful language that we could use as patients in terms of how you describe the pain of a headache versus a cut, for example? Or
Yeah. So I hate asking about people's pain. Of course I have to understand how painful it is, but people are, they're always like, oh, what if I answer wrong? What if I say it's 10 out of 10 and they look at me funny? I hate the number scale. I don't think it works very well. Also, it doesn't matter what your pain threshold is like compared to someone else's. I'm not diagnosing someone else with this condition. I'm diagnosing you with this condition, and I'm assessing you. So I want to know, like, how bad is it? You can compare to other things you've had, maybe. I think that's useful. Say, you know, this is bothering me more than a bad toothache.
Got it.
Or, you know, or something like that. Or this, you know, the other thing is that how is the pain affecting your function rather than trying to give it a number? You know, this is a pain that if I'm in a meeting, I can kind of deal with it. I can ignore it and do my meeting. Or this is a pain that wakes me from a sound sleep.
Got it. What about bringing another person to the visit with you?
Yeah, so bringing a family member or a close friend, I think it can be very helpful. It can be someone to take notes or help with clarifying symptoms or a timeline, or if you need help with translation or something. But remember that we want to hear as much as possible from you. Don't let them sort of take over and speak for you. And I would add, the other person in the room, metaphorically speaking, is often Google, right? So if you've Googled your symptoms, don't it's really hard, but try to put that aside. You know, if Google says it's cancer or whatever, put that aside. You can ask us about it at the end, and I think that's a useful thing to do. Or start out with that. Say, I've Googled this, you know, and Google says it's cancer, but I'm obviously here for your opinion, kind of thing. You know, I tell people, look, I'm glad you mentioned the word cancer to me because I wasn't going to say it to you because it's not even on my list of possibilities. And then you would have walked out saying, oh, well, the doctor didn't say it wasn't cancer. So if it's in your mind, yeah, please let us know and let us know the context about that. But in terms of bringing another human into the room with you, just make sure it's someone that you would be comfortable answering all questions in front of, because we might ask you about your recreational drug use or your last menstrual period or your sexual activity or, you know, so bringing a coworker or a brand new partner, you know, girlfriend or something on a date, which I have seen in the urgent care, might not be the best person to have in the room.
Is it okay to record the visit? What's your thought on that?
There was a time when we were seeing a little bit more of that. I think it's only okay to record the visit if everyone who is being recorded consents to being recorded. So please don't try to secretly record your doctor's visit. And really, you don't need to nowadays. There's more and more computerized note-taking. There are patient portals where you can see your results. You can see visit notes, summaries, you know, next appointments, reminders of you know, who the specialist that you were referred to, things like that. So yeah, only record it for a good reason and with consent. What if
the doctor seems to brush off your symptoms or doesn't seem concerned and you leave feeling, I guess, unheard?
Yeah, I think that I really don't like it when people leave feeling unheard. I think if you are feeling unheard, you need to say it. And that's really hard because of the power differential, of course. But, you know, mention it. Mention that, look, I don't feel like you're hearing me. And let's try to understand each other a little bit better. I mean, ultimately, effective communication is a team sport. And we need everyone on the team sort of having the same goal and trying to achieve the same goal.
All right, Dr. Bardwaj, thank you.
My pleasure.
That's our medical column with Dr. Raj Bardwaj. 2 minutes to 7. Heather Wells is here with a news update.
Good morning. Well, exactly 1 year ago today, Manitoba's former PC government hired a recruitment firm to bring 150 doctors to this province. In that time, not a single doctor has arrived. We're going to hear from the NDP, the current health minister, coming up in our next news. Grieving a woman who died after being hit by a vehicle on Monday. Dozens gathered near Notre Dame and McPhillips last night, the spot where Loretta Moraine Green was hit. The 32-year-old mother of 6 being remembered as a loving, caring person, always smiling. We'll take you to that vigil in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, that story about doctors and recruitment being slow or non-existent was something we're going to ask the Premier about. Premier Bob Canoe is in our studio in the next hour live on CBC with our regular monthly interview. We're also going to touch base with him about a number of other issues. So stay tuned for that. That is at 7:45 this morning live. In addition, in the next hour, the Canadian Medical Association has released recommendations. There's a new draft policy out this morning about managing private and public health care in this country. We're going to talk to CMA President Joss Reimer, who, of course, is a physician who was based here in Manitoba, so knows all about our system. We'll be able to localize all of that report. 15 in Winnipeg, hot there outside with a high today of 26.
Today on The Current.
We've put a lot of work into the bay and a lot of work into growing oysters for years. If it kills them off, it's going to take a long time to recover, if it recovers.
I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. Oyster farmers and consumers are worried about a parasite killing the mollusks. We head to PEI, where the parasite has forced a closure of a popular harvesting site.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC list.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. 2 members of Canada's soccer team are being sent home from the Olympic Games in Paris. They are accused of using a drone to spy on New Zealand's women's soccer team. One of the people involved is an assistant coach with Canada's women's team. The CBC's Salima Shivji is in Paris and joins me now. Salima, what can you tell us?
Well, Canada's Olympic Committee has done a review on this, and they've announced that there was a drone used to spy on the New Zealand team. The person operating that drone, Joseph Lombardi, is an unaccredited analyst with Canada Soccer. He is off the team and will be sent directly home. He was caught and detained by French police after some New Zealand team members saw a drone flying over their practice 2 days ago. And it turns out a drone was also used to spy on the New Zealand team on July 19th. The assistant coach that Lombardi reports to, Jasmine Mander, is also being kicked off the team and will be sent home. Canada's soccer staff will have to take mandatory ethics training. Now, Canada and New Zealand are set to face off against each other tomorrow in their first match here at the Olympics. And in light of all of this, the head coach, Bev Priestman, has decided to not be on the sidelines for that match. She won't be coaching the team. In a statement, she apologized to the New Zealand team and says that this doesn't reflect the values of Team Canada. And we've also now received a response from the IOC on all of this. It welcomes the fact that Canada's Olympic team has taken swift action to resolve this.
What impact could this have on the team going forward?
Well, it's a blow any way you look at it, right? On the eve of the games, just starting, first of all, Priestman won't be coaching that first match now, and all eyes will be on the pitch when the players hit it, obviously Canada versus New Zealand. It could rattle the players, even though many of them are veterans. And Canada is the reigning Olympic champion. They won the gold medal at the Tokyo Games in 2021. They want to defend that title. And this whole thing, spying with drones, regardless of who instigated it, could be a stain on their reputation. And the statement from Canada's Olympic Committee does say the review is ongoing and there could be further action taken if needed.
Thank you, Salima.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Salima Shivji in Paris. And for more on this story, go to cbc.ca and click Paris 2024. It's on the main page. Fast-moving wildfire is now burning just 12 kilometers from Jasper, Alberta. The wind is shifting. That is fanning the flames that forced the evacuation of the historic town and the national park. Officials there say 25,000 residents and visitors have safely left. Now it's up to the fire crews to protect what's there. Kyle Bax has the latest.
It's all hands on deck, from firefighting planes and helicopters to ground crews and heavy machinery, trying to protect Jasper from 2 out-of-control wildfires less than 12 kilometers from the Jasper town site. The fires sprung up quickly on Monday after weeks of hot, dry weather.
These fires are exhibiting aggressive fire behavior.
Parks Canada officials say the evacuation of the national park is complete. No small feat, considering the roughly 25,000 residents and tourists, most of them heading west into BC, the lucky ones finding a spare hotel room, others sleeping in campgrounds and evacuation centers. A stressful and dramatic experience.
We slept for a few hours in the car, and now we're probably just going to try and continue our vacation towards Banff.
Couldn't believe it. We'd planned for this trip for about 4 or 5 months.
So far, officials say no buildings have been damaged from the out-of-control wildfires. But with so much smoke, it's hard to tell, says Katie Ellsworth, incident commander with Parks Canada.
We are still assessing the impacts to the infrastructure in the South wildfire, and we do hope in the coming days with some cooler temperatures and hopefully some rain that we'll have some clear air and some breathing room, frankly.
Many of the Jasper evacuees are already heading back towards Alberta through the southern part of the province. Kyle Bax, CBC News, Kamloops.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address U.S. Congress today. He is hoping to boost support among lawmakers and reinforce the relationship between the two countries. But Netanyahu has already been greeted by demonstrations on Capitol Hill.
Bring them home now! Bring them home now! Bring them home!
Relatives and friends of hostages still being held by Hamas say it is time for a ceasefire and a hostage deal.
We know that there is one person that needs to decide that this deal needs to be sealed, and this is Benjamin Netanyahu. He needs to decide not to delay this deal, and we are here to remind him that. Seal that deal right now.
I'm begging Bibi, help. We need the 120 hostages out.
Capitol Police arrested hundreds of anti-war protesters yesterday. They had illegally entered a congressional building and staged a sit-in. But Netanyahu is also feeling pressure in his home country. Thousands of people took to the streets of Tel Aviv last night. Many of them are hoping that Netanyahu's speech today will include news about a ceasefire deal. Back in Washington, a growing number of Democrats say they will boycott today's address. They do not approve of the way Netanyahu has handled the war in Gaza. Tonight, Americans will hear from U.S. President Joe Biden on his plan for his final months in office. It will be his first public speech since dropping out of the presidential race. The CBC's Ellen Morrow has more from Washington.
How are you feeling since you dropped out of the race, sir?
President Joe Biden ignoring reporters' questions, walking up the stairs to Air Force One on his way back to Washington after days of COVID isolation in his Delaware home.
Mr. President, what will your message be?
Tonight, Biden will make a primetime address from the Oval Office. In a social media post, the president wrote the speech will focus on how he'll finish the job for the American people.
Joe Biden will go down in American history as one of the most consequential presidents of all time.
After weeks of uncertainty, Democrats, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, have been praising Biden's decision to end his re-election bid.
President Joe Biden has made the selfless decision to pass the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris.
Biden exited the race after escalating pressure from his own party, concerns about his fitness for a second term, fears he would struggle to beat Donald Trump. In his final 6 months in office, Biden will work to cement his legacy. That reportedly includes a renewed push to end the war in Gaza. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
The sentencing hearing for Peter Nygard begins today. A Toronto jury found the disgraced fashion mogul guilty of 4 counts of sexual assault back in November. The 82-year-old has been in jail since his arrest in 2020. Jamie Strachan reports.
Peter Nygard will undoubtedly spend years behind bars. The question is, how long? The Crown is expected to ask for a 3 to 5 year penitentiary term. The court will hear victim impact statements. Crown Attorney Neville Gowallis spoke of their ordeal after the verdict.
This is a crime that typically happens in private and profoundly impacts human dignity. To stand up and recount those indignities in a public forum such as a courtroom is never easy and takes great courage.
Nygard's lawyer will argue for a shorter jail term. A recently filed medical report said Nygard has lost 30 pounds since his arrest. For years, Nygard was on top of the fashion world, crisscrossing the globe opening stores. All the while, allegations of sexual misconduct swirled around him. In this case, the assaults happened at Nygard's Toronto headquarters. They stretch back decades and were only recently reported to police by women. At trial, the Crown painted Nygard as a predator who used his power and wealth to lure and abuse women. Jasminder Seiko is the Director of Community Engagement at Victim Services Toronto.
This is somebody who is being sentenced in his 80s. I think that a lot could have been done a lot earlier.
Nygard also faces numerous sex-related charges in Manitoba, Quebec, and New York. Dozens of women are also part of a civil suit in the United States. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Economists are expecting the Bank of Canada will lower interest rates today. It would be the second straight month the benchmark rate is lowered. A drop would be welcome news for those struggling to get a mortgage. David Doyle is head of economics with Macquarie Group in Toronto. He says he expects to see interest rates drop, but not just because of lower inflation.
For Bank of Canada, it's no longer just about inflation. I think increasingly there will be concerns about growth, and in particular, the undesirable rise in unemployment.
Most economists expect the Bank of Canada to lower the rate to 4.5%. That is a decrease of 0.25%. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
critical. So the reduced administrative burden, when we look at family physicians, we know they're spending about a day a week doing paperwork, which is just an astronomical amount of time. And it's really impacting their burnout rates because they don't feel that it's meaningful work. It's really stressful work that doesn't feel like you're really contributing to the wellness of your patients. And that's what they want to do. They want to care for patients. But also just the time. Imagine how many more people that physician could see if we could reduce that paperwork or make the electronic systems better, make sure that we have good referral pathways that are easy to navigate. Those types of things we're asking all of the provinces and territories to look at and see how can we reduce that just to give a few more hours to every physician to be able to see more patients. But then on the team-based side, we want to see not just the physicians working alone, which is something that I've experienced, but I've also moved and worked at Northern Connection Clinic here in Winnipeg, where we had a social worker, we had a dietitian, nurse, a pharmacist, and it's so much better when you're working in a team, you're sharing a health record, you have all of that shared expertise, and my patients could go see the dietitian to talk about diabetes-friendly, low-cost diets, which they could talk to me about, but the dietitian has more expertise and more time. And so it was less stressful for me as a physician, and really it was just better care.
You mentioned the electronic system of records when you were talking about paperwork for doctors and such. We have talked about having an efficient electronic system for patient records and for documentations in this country for decades. Where are we at with that, and should that be more of a priority to find efficiencies?
I think electronic records are a huge priority for anyone who works in the healthcare system. We see, many facilities are still paper-based, and that causes a lot of harm in a variety of ways. One is it's not very efficient, it's difficult to use, but also the communication is really challenging. When we have a shared record and we can get access to the information we need when we need it, that lets your healthcare provider make much better decisions for your health. And it's more efficient because we're not reordering the same tests again or trying a medication you've already tried or getting things mixed up where we're giving you something that maybe doesn't go well with other medications that you're on. We saw from the federal government a new bill that's going to require that different electronic record providers make sure that the different systems can talk to each other. And that's really important so that we can share information across systems. But we all need to be working on electronic systems. And that's a really great way to reduce some of that administrative burden because writing paper charts is a lot of work.
I know this is a draft policy, and then now it has to go to stakeholders. There'll be feedback, and you'll be finalizing your recommendations. But thank you very much for talking to us on step one here. Appreciate it.
Well, I'd love talking to CDC Winnipeg anytime.
Dr. Joss Reimer, president of the Canadian Medical Association, who is here, of course, as well in Winnipeg.
Even as Steve Carell worked at the office, he had a general interest in retail. Whoopi Goldberg capitalized on her view of medical marijuana. And Francis Ford Coppola is the godfather of the grape.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Best product in a leading role. Celebrity CEOs on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
Hot today, high 26, humidex will make it feel like 32 in Winnipeg. Heat warning in the southwest, and we're continuing to roll some summer tunes like this one, Jeremy Albino. This is called Rollin' Down the 405. Cool, huh? Summertime music to open up the windows and roll down the 405. Now, to be clear, this is Jeremy Albino. We were just looking this up. Our team was. He's not from here. But we thought, okay, well, he's not singing about our 405. But where is our 405? 405 here is about, what do we think, a 5K stretch? And you probably know it if you live up around Ildeshane. So Provincial Road 405, you could be rolling down this morning. Runs between pretty much north of Ildeshane, in between into the Lorette area. So you might be rolling down it this morning. If you are, you make sure you got your shades on because it's going to be really bright and sunny out there on your morning drive. It's been good so far, though. We haven't heard of any problems on the highway or in the city of Winnipeg. If you need to reach Corey on the commute, 788-3093 is where you can do that. As far as the shades go, mainly sunny in Winnipeg, 16 and calm. High of 26 today. Brandon, foggy, 15. Thompson, partly cloudy, 11. And the southwest corner of Manitoba does include heat warnings, probably going to extend through today, the next 2 days, with making it feel, the temperature feeling like minus 38 over the next couple of days. So it's going to be really, really hot. Take it easy, lots of water, get the shades rolling. Coming up in the next half hour of the program, Information Radio has our regular monthly interview with Premier Wab Kinew. He's going to be joining us in studio. So we have much to discuss with him this morning. We're going to ask him to respond to some of the frustrations that we heard yesterday on the show from some residents in Sage Creek around crime. As well, we'll ask about the announcements that have been made about downtown safety and safe consumption sites in the city as well. So that's coming up. Plus some responses to the news about doctor recruitment and how that's going or not. And so you'll hear that story coming up with Heather at 7:30, and then the Premier will be here in the next half hour of the show. Right now, though, speaking of developing news, let's turn our attention to morning sports. Scott Regehr joins us. Hi there.
Hey there, Marcy.
So at the Olympics right now, there's controversy ahead of the opening match for Canada's women's soccer team that is very much developing news this morning.
Sounds like one of the mosquitoes that got me on my deck last night. Of course, that is a drone. Canada is accused of deploying them over opponent New Zealand's practices this week, Marcy. A non-accredited member of the Canada soccer support team was detained by French authorities Monday after allegedly flying the drone over the Kiwis. New Zealand subsequently filed a formal complaint with the IOC's Integrity Unit, and the Canadian Olympic Committee has responded this morning, Marcy. In a statement, the COC says 2 Soccer Canada staff members are being sent home and that coach Bev Priestman will not be on the sideline for tomorrow's match. Priestman herself says in the statement, quote, "I am ultimately responsible for conduct in our program. Accordingly, to emphasize our team's commitment to integrity, I have decided to voluntarily withdraw from coaching the match," end quote.
Do you think that's going to be the end of this, Scott? Like, where's this going next?
Well, the COC says it's continuing to review the facts, Marcy, and says there could be further sanctions. This isn't the first time Soccer Canada has been accused of using drones to scout opponents. The same thing happened before a World Cup qualifying match in Toronto a few years ago when the Canadian men's team was getting set to play Honduras. Then you have the matter of the French authorities. It is illegal to fly drones over Olympic facilities. French security forces guarding the games say they're intercepting an average of 6 drones per day. Here's the French Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal.
As you can imagine, these could be individuals or tourists trying to capture images. That's why it's important to remind people of the rules, the ban on flying drones. The systems we have in place enable us to intercept them very quickly.
So, punishment being meted out by the Canadian Olympic Committee and potentially, Marcy, by French authorities as well. Quite a way to begin defense of the gold medal Bev Priestman's side won in Tokyo.
And probably not the backdrop that they wanted, as they're about to be announcing the flag bearers for an opening ceremony for Canada, right?
Yeah.
Who are some of the main candidates that you're watching and thinking that could be on the list?
Well, first off, it will be candidates, as you pointed out. Flag bearers, not bearer. This is what the COC has done since the 2018 games in Pyeongchang when Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer opened things up. In each instance since then, there has been a male and female sharing the duties. And if that's the case again, Marcy, I have some worthy possible tandems.
Jesse Fleming with a chance to put Canada in front against the Americans. Fleming scores! Canada leads!
That is Canadian soccer captain Jessie Fleming scoring against the U.S. en route to Olympic gold in Tokyo. This morning, soccer news notwithstanding. How about Fleming alongside another Olympic champion, decathlete Damian Warner? And speaking of those familiar with making the podium, Marcy, what about Andre DeGrasse and Penny Oleksiak carrying the flag in on Friday? They are the country's most decorated Olympians, and there's a good chance Paris could be the last games for each of them. I say carry the flag in. I guess I mean along the River Seine, which is the way they're going to do it. But all of that said, Marcy, my choice for the opening ceremony flag bearers are a pair of athletes who have never won Olympic medals before and might in Paris, the captains of the two basketball teams. Kelly Olynyk for the men's team, Natalie Ochanwa of the women's team. I just have a soft spot for veterans, unaccomplished veterans. So we'll see what happens. Noon Central Time, the opening ceremonies, and we'll find out for sure.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate it.
You betcha.
We'll have to see who they announce later today. It is coming up to 7:30. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are listening to CBC here with our team at Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube this morning. So wherever you're joining us, thanks for being with us. Coming up, we have our monthly interview with Premier Wab Kinew. He will be in studio live here in downtown Winnipeg after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. It is beautiful sunny sky greeting you this morning. Currently at 16 degrees. We're going to climb to 26. That is seasonal for this time of year. Humidex of 32. A Portage la Prairie man wants an apology from RCMP after he was wrongfully charged. Scott Joseph Taylor was charged earlier this month with obtaining the sexual services from a minor. RCMP alleged teenage girls were being lured and forced to have sex with men in Portage la Prairie in exchange for drugs. They charged 6 men in Portage, including Taylor. But 10 days later, the Mounties sent an update saying Taylor was not involved. Scott Taylor says it came too late and his life is ruined.
I've been threatened by the public. I've had death threats. My house was spray painted, vandalized. Like, in what people would be thinking, it's just been awful.
In a statement to CBC, RCMP say the information they had at the time supported the charges. They said once they learned Taylor was not involved, they moved quickly to stay those charges. The Manitoba government hired a recruiter a year ago to bring 150 doctors to this province. 1 year later, not a single doctor has arrived. The company that was supposed to be recruiting is Canadian Health Labs. The firm did not answer CBC's questions as to why it's made no progress. Current Health Minister Uzoma Eseguera says the province hasn't spent any money yet, but it would cost Manitoba money to cancel that contract.
In this case, no doctors have been recruited to Manitoba. No dollars have been spent on this contract, and we're going to continue to assess whether or not this is an agreement that should be in place while we do the real work and take real steps to recruit doctors here in Manitoba for Manitobans.
Canadian Health Labs has already been under scrutiny in other provinces. It was charging $300 an hour for an agency nurse, 6 times more than what staff nurses were earning. Grieving a woman who died after being hit by a vehicle on Monday. Dozens near Notre Dame and McPhillips last night, the spot where Loretta Moraine Green was hit. The 32-year-old's mother, Diane Thomas, spoke at the vigil.
My heart just got ripped out of my chest. It hurts. No parent should ever go through what I'm going through.
Thomas says Green was a mother of 6 who loved spending time with her family and cared about everyone she met. Winnipeg police are investigating. A firearms expert in Winnipeg says the growth in 3D printed guns is a serious issue. Winnipeg police say a 25-year-old man was directing the production and trafficking of printed guns from his cell at Stony Mountain Institution. Police say the man used a smuggled cell phone to get components shipped to addresses in Winnipeg. Firearms specialist Dave Brown says people accused of producing guns are often caught when they're ordering parts.
You cannot print
a 3D gun, you can only make parts of a gun. You still need the metal parts. You still need the barrel. You still need the slide. You still need the springs, things like that. So that's where a lot of the criminals are being caught when they order the metal parts.
Brown says 3D printed guns don't have serial numbers, meaning they aren't traceable. The sentencing hearing for disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard begins today in Toronto. The 82-year-old has been in jail since his arrest in 2020. And in November, a Toronto jury found him guilty of 4 counts of sexual assault. The Crown is expected to ask for a 3 to 5 year term in a federal penitentiary. Crown Attorney Neville Galwala says court will hear victim impact statements.
This is a crime that typically happens in private and profoundly impacts human dignity. To stand up and recount those indignities in a public forum such as a courtroom is never easy and takes great courage.
Nygard also faces numerous sex-related charges here in Winnipeg as well as in Quebec and New York. 2 wildfires threatening Jasper, Alberta are now just 12 kilometers from the outskirts of the town.
These fires are exhibiting aggressive fire behavior. And we do hope in the coming days with some cooler temperatures and hopefully some rain that we'll have some clear air and some breathing room, frankly.
Katie Ellsworth with Parks Canada. The town and Jasper National Park have been evacuated with an estimated 25,000 people on the move in the past 2 days. Evacuees initially were ordered to go to BC, but they're now being directed to Grand Prairie, Calgary or Edmonton. And BC's in the midst of its own fire emergency with more than 400 blazes burning across that province. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. And the Winnipeg Sea Bears have clinched a playoff spot for a second straight year. Last night, the Sea Bears beating the Calgary Surge 111-104 in front of more than 11,000 fans at Canada Life Centre. The 2 teams are going to face each other again tomorrow in Calgary. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on in the forecast this morning. Abby in his rubber ducky shirt and his bucket hat is like totally representing summer. No doubt what season is if you're looking at this guy on YouTube. It's a good look.
Yeah, thank you, Mercy. It's a sunny and warm day across the province for sure. Highs will be ranging from 26 to 30. Breezy conditions in some area. It's going to be clear and partly cloudy in other areas, and temperatures will be dropping tonight. Winnipeg at 16, heading to a high of 26. Brandon at 15 with some foggy conditions, heading to a high of 30. Thompson is at 11. It will head to 27, though it's going to feel like 32. Churchill at 15, heading to a high of 25. Dauphin is misty at the moment at 14, heading to a high of 28. And don't forget, the southwest corner is having that heat warning in effect. Gimlet 16 at the moment, heading to a high of 26. Steinbach 15, heading to a high of 26. And Morris 15, heading to a high of 26.
All right, thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on now on the morning commute. It's been bright out there, although a little fog in some places, Corey.
Yeah, I haven't heard any major issues because of that fog so far on the commuter line, but heard around Portage or so is where the fog is happening. But if you do see some issues there, give me a call. Also, I am curious. I saw on Saturday, I was out for a bike ride with my little guy. Couldn't quite bike onto the river trail. The river's dropped below it, but it's still really muddy there, heading towards the forks there from just outside the ledge. So I'm curious if anyone's biked that or walked that, see what condition that's in. Would love to get an update on that or any other trails, roads, bike lanes, highways. Give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Now stick around, and Abby, maybe pop your headphones back on here because I want to revisit something yesterday with a special guest who's in studio.
Okay.
And that guest you're about to see on YouTube, our guest come up here is... Ta-da! The Premier of Manitoba, Bob Canoe. Good morning.
Good morning.
I know you're here for Serious Matters in your monthly interview. We'll get there. But it's summer, and yesterday we all started doing this bucket list of Manitoba spots. Abby, what was yours again?
Altona, I want to see the sunflower.
Yeah, you're a sunflower person. Yeah. Corey, yours was?
And you know what? Actually, mine is the Grand Beach trails. They're like a hidden gem, and they're right, people go to the beach when they go to Grand Beach, but there's these beautiful trails you can climb up. You get actually a beautiful view of the lake. There's actually some elevation in there.
Nice.
Gorgeous. Lovely place for a hike or
People
run.
called in about Steep Rock. I was talking Gimli. So Premier Rob Canoe, do you have spots that you really feels like summer in Manitoba, got to get there?
Well, first of all, when we got weather like this,
anywhere in Manitoba, plus Lake of the Woods, are the best places on earth. But if you're looking for something to check out, I would really recommend Spirit Sands Desert in Spruce Woods Provincial Park. It's unlike anywhere else in Manitoba. It's very accessible in terms of, being able to get in and out within a day trip, and it's really reasonable. So in terms of tourism picks, I'd say Spirit Sands. But on a personal level, where do I want to get to in the summertime? I want to get to an outdoor powwow. Like whether it's in Sioux Valley or Swan Lake or Long Plains, if I'm outside and the sun takes on that golden hour hue and we're having fun singing and dancing, to me, that's the best part of a Manitoba summer. And, when you go to Long Plains and you see people from the Hatarian communities come out to enjoy, or you see people making the drive out from Brandon to get to some of the Dakota communities, it's a cool way to bring Manitobans together, too.
I know I saw a recent photo of you enjoying a powwow. You're in regalia. I don't know if you still get a chance or have time to actually to dance.
Yeah, definitely. It's what we do for fun. It's what our family loves to do. It's one of the things alongside, hockey and basketball that we're trying to, just make those memories around. So definitely it's a little different as the premier. I can't go to a weekend usually. Maybe I can go for an hour or two. But it's definitely still an important part of life. And, this is one of the things that makes Manitoba summers great. Some folks are going to go to the, Ukrainian National Festival. Other people are going to go to Folk Fest. Other people are going to go to the Powwow Trail. But whatever it is, being outdoor, having some fun, being able to enjoy time with the people you love, it's an amazing time of year.
Where do you go in Manitoba, listeners? 788-3205. It is 20 to 8, and obviously Premier Wab Kinew is here for our monthly interview. Well, let's turn to some serious matters, if we may.
Yeah.
Let's start with what's in our news this morning. We're reporting that a private recruitment firm hired by the previous BC government to bring in 150 new doctors to Manitoba has failed to recruit any. It's been a year now. I know that the health minister has already weighed in on this. Uzoma Osaguera telling CBC that there would be a penalty if we break ties with this group. However, the health minister wouldn't answer if they or their office have been in contact with Canadian Health Labs. I'm curious whether or not you believe you will be in contact with that group to put pressure on them to deliver on this.
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is we want more doctors, right? And we're willing to do what it takes to get more doctors. We've laid out our plan in terms of more medical school seats. We've been working behind the scenes with communities like Carberry to try and recruit physicians here. So the more doctors, the merrier. I wish we could say this contract was actually working and bringing doctors, but we can't. Like you're reporting, the number is 0. I can confirm that. This is something the previous government did that we inherited. I think the idea right now is let's not throw more good money after bad. We don't want to pay this cancellation fee. It seems like it's more responsible with your tax dollars just to kind of leave this contract be, let it wither on the vine, as it were, and then we put our efforts into the things that are producing results, which is international recruitment, putting out those incentives, and then putting in the elbow grease to find and match physicians with communities who need them. And so that's where our focus is going to be.
What's the tipping point, though, before you do, pay the fee to Canadian Health Labs and break ties with them? And what will you seek a conversation with them to put pressure on them to start delivering? Because we are still paying them, and effectively in a year we've been still paying them with taxpayer money to not deliver.
Well, no, I think the point is we're not paying them anything, so we don't want to precipitate us having to incur this cancellation fee. Right?
You think the fee is too? You think the fee isn't worth paying? You think it's still worth keeping them to try?
We inherited a bad deal, and I don't want to waste more government money getting out of the deal. It'd be like the calculation you made if you want to get out of a cell phone contract, right? In some cases, it might just be cheaper to ride it out, right? And
but
so
sometimes you suck it up. But sometimes you suck it up, so to speak. You break the contract, and then you do go with a new firm that shows results.
Agreed. And in this case, I don't think we're at the point where canceling and paying that fee is a good value proposition for you, the tax-paying public. I think instead we just lean into the stuff that is working, which is great folks in the Department of Health going out and matching physicians with rural communities, training the new next generation of doctors here in Manitoba, and then focusing on getting people who've been educated internationally, getting their credentials recognized more quickly.
I want to ask you, Premier, about the federal government's planned increase to the capital gains tax, because to the subject we're talking about, it's been criticized by some who say it will cause doctors to leave Canada and make the job of recruiting from abroad, as you just alluded to, more difficult. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've definitely heard the critiques. By the way, congratulations to Dr. Joss Reimer, incoming head of the Canadian Medical Association. I know she's been one of the voices who has spoken out on this issue. So we definitely hear the concerns, hear the critiques, like without getting too much into the weeds on this issue, because it does really get into, being a medical corporation and, when do you realize capital gains versus when do you defer them? What I would say is we're sensitive to anything we can do at the provincial level. This is a federal change that's taken place, but at the provincial level, if we're able to say, listen, we've got really strong incentives for a young resident to choose family medicine, to choose to become a family doctor, we're going to make that make sense for you financially, but also professionally and work-life balance-wise. I think that's where our efforts are really focused on, because we're seeing the results of that so far. We're going to have a lot more big announcements on primary care and team-based care as we go through the fall months and into the winter. And so I think that our focus is, yes, we're always going to be a listening government and hear the concerns and critiques that physicians bring forward. And that's why we're rolling out the things that we think are actually going to move the needle much more quickly, which is let's help people with overhead. Let's help people with work-life balance. Let's make it easier to build a team around a physician so that they can give you the comprehensive care of having a social worker and a nutritionist and a physiotherapist alongside that family doctor that you want to see.
I want to turn to news of a trip you're going to be taking. I understand you're part of a delegation that is going to be going to Houston, Texas, to explore their housing solution to the homelessness crisis. What are you hoping to learn there? Who are you going with? Can you share some details with us?
So just a gentle correction. I'm not personally going, but our team is going. The Minister of Housing Addictions, Homelessness, Bernadette Smith, who you know, amazing person. She's leading the delegation, along with the folks who are leading the homelessness file for us and the city of Winnipeg. The mayors of Brandon and Thompson are also attending. We have folks from the service, the front lines, who are dealing with homeless folks in Winnipeg and across Manitoba. And then we have some folks from the private sector who are really active with trying to get a better social situation and try to address this humanitarian crisis, as it's been called, in our streets. So that's who's going. They're going to spend the balance of this week going down to Houston and saying, how is it that you were able to coalesce everybody around one single plan and move tens of thousands of people off the streets into housing and then wrap them around with supports? So what we're interested in here as a Manitoba government is we want to move the needle on homelessness, to provide those folks with dignity, to provide you with the pride that comes along with seeing our city and our province move forward in a better way, and then also to address some of the very negative spin-off effects that we've been seeing in downtown and in other parts of the city. And I think that part of it is going to be looking at, okay, what is Houston doing right? But I think part of it is also having this crucial group of people who are the decision makers and the influencers on this, spending the time together and over lunches and over dinners and on the plane rides down there, really coalescing around this one plan. And it's my expectation, it's my goal, it's my wish out of this trip to Houston that all those folks, which represent all the pieces that we need, governments, Indigenous led governments and organizations, private sector, public sector, all of that coming together and saying, we've got one plan and we're moving forward together to address the issue of homelessness and related challenges.
Does the fact that you're supported and interested in having this delegation go and explore this model in Houston, and I know we've looked at it in the past on the program as well and on CBC.
Yes, absolutely.
Does it speak to the fact that you believe that could work here, but also that maybe we are too fractured here, that there's a lot of people doing maybe work that may even be effective, but that it's really important that we get under the same tent, that's something that's missing?
That last point in particular, I don't know if it's fractured or it's just that so many people with good intentions have started their own initiatives, and as a result, they're each pursuing their own set of priorities. But the idea that us as a funder and us as a convening force, as your Manitoba government, that we need to bring everyone together into one cohesive direction, that we can't have turf wars, that we can't have people arguing about what the right approach is, that we need to just say, we're getting people off the street, we're getting them into housing, and then we're giving them the mental health and addiction support and access to health care that's necessary for them to succeed in that housing. I think that's a crucial step. If we want to have good value for the taxpayer, if we want to have results for the people that we want to move the needle on in terms of more dignity and access to health care, we got to agree on one plan, and we all got to be working on common purpose.
12 minutes to 8 o'clock. Premier Wab Kinew in studio at CBC with us this morning. There's developing news this morning. The Free Press is reporting that CO Silica is working on a new proposal in Manitoba. This time, Broken Head First Nation, the Free Press reports, had asked for a meeting with CO Silica, a presentation. Your government obviously rejected their last proposal to mine in southeastern Manitoba. What do you think about the new proposal that could be coming? CO Silica has spoken to the Free Press. We have requested an interview with them. We have yet to hear from them. That was just this morning. I'm just curious what your thoughts are hearing that this company is now, at least in conversation with another Manitoba community, as reported by the paper today.
Well, at this point, it's an article above the fold in the Free Press, and so I'm seeing the same public reporting that you're seeing, that all Manitobans are. So I don't have the ability to really comment on any details, but I can tell you about what went into the decision to not approve that mine, and it was effectively serious concerns about this being an unproven technique and the unpredictable impacts that would have on drinking water. And consequently, the health of people in eastern Manitoba.
So if they're going to do any business in Manitoba anywhere as Premier, what would you need to hear from CO Silica to feel that it's safe for residents?
Well, first of all, you have the whole question of the environment and safe drinking water, but also you have to have the confidence of the public. And, we want to be a business-friendly government. We want to build the economy. Listen, silica is the stuff that powers smartphones. It powers solar panels. It has a huge role in the economy of the future. So we're definitely open to those conversations. In fact, we have approved and encouraged one silica project to move forward in a different part of the province. But in terms of winning the public support of Manitobans, that's not our job as government. That is the job of proponents to do. And so, again, there were serious concerns about the environmental impacts, the health impacts, and there was a lack of public support in terms of the last time this company brought forward. And so that's the basis of what our decision was. We looked at those factors and we concluded this was not in the public interest.
I want to switch to talking about the supervised consumption site in downtown that developed actually your official announcement between the last time you were here in studio with us. Mm-hmm. You've announced this here in Manitoba, but it comes also, I want to look at what federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said, because he called supervised consumption sites, quote, drug dens, unquote. He said if he becomes next prime minister, he will shut down any safe consumption sites next to schools, playgrounds, anywhere, as he put it, that endanger the public and take lives. How concerning is that for you when you are hearing that from a federal leader?
Well, I don't want a supervised consumption site near a school or near a daycare, or in a way that's going to really impact the broader public safety. We know it is going to have some impacts on the neighborhood around it, wherever we put it. So the location is probably one of the most important decisions about moving ahead with the supervised consumption site. But I also want to say that this is a serious issue. We are a province that is losing hundreds of people each year. People are losing their lives over opioids and, fentanyl and meth and like all these other addiction problems. Alcohol is still a major issue for many people living the way of life that we're trying to assist on. But we have to talk about this in a serious way. This is not the time for oversimplification. This is a time for nuance. This is not the time for talking points. This is the time to have a substantive discussion about how are we going to address a public health emergency. Right? And so when we're talking about lives at stake, when we're talking about the impacts of, like a grandmother being assaulted randomly in downtown Winnipeg because of addictions issues that are being left unchecked, we have to come forward with a serious and responsible plan. So why are we moving forward with supervised consumption sites? It's because the addictions medicine experts, the physicians who specialize in this stuff, say this is not a silver bullet, but this is going to keep people alive. You are going to see a decline, maybe not the biggest decline that we want to see, but you are going to start to see overdose death numbers come down in Manitoba if you move ahead with this plan. So again, if this is going to become a thing about talking points, what I would say is that supervised consumption sites are like Buckley's cough medicine. They taste awful and they work. No one has ever died in a supervised consumption site in Canada. This is an important public health tool that we have that we can start to reach out to people who are living in crisis and then connect them with primary care. And then maybe if we find out somebody's pregnant, we can prevent their baby from being born with a bloodborne infection or a sexually transmitted infection. If maybe we have that touch point with them in one of these sites, we can get them into housing. We can get them the mental health supports. We can talk to them about treatment. Are you ready to change your life around? This is why we want to do a supervised consumption site. So what I can share with the public is we've been working hard on this. We have a great partner with Aboriginal Health and Wellness. We don't control the entire timeline because we need a federal government exemption to move forward with this. So we are going to have to work with the feds. But I can tell you where we initially thought we'd be looking at next fiscal year, we're now looking at accelerating that timeline and moving it ahead thanks to the good work of Aboriginal Health and Wellness and the ability of them to kind of move things forward. So
by the end of this year?
Well, I don't know if we could say that because, again, the federal exemption is something that's outside of our control.
But you said initially you're looking at next fiscal year, which leads me to ask, are you thinking this will be earlier?
If we could do this by this fall, I would like us to do so. But because of the federal exemption, I don't think we can say that with absolute certainty. So maybe early in the next calendar year.
I want to ask you about downtown safety overall. You're committing $1.5 million for the action plan. The majority goes to the sobering center. The rest goes, though, to mental health training, downtown patrols. Brandon's also getting funding for a similar program. How much of a difference do you think those programs will make in Winnipeg and Brandon's downtowns overall?
Well, I can tell you that in combination what we've done on the retail theft initiative by having more visible police presence in areas like Osborne Village, as the MLA, I can tell you it's making a difference. I am routinely hearing from constituents and business owners who say, this is an important step. We'd like you to extend it. So the downtown safety piece is a similar initiative. It's focused more on the foot patrols and then the 190 Disraeli facility being a place for people to go if they are intoxicated on meth or other substances and to begin that path towards first sobering up and then hopefully also getting tied into healthcare and the next level of interventions. Beyond Brandon, I can tell you later this week, we're also going to announce $50,000 to start a similar project in downtown Thompson. So we are trying to make this a province-wide initiative because we do see safety concerns, addictions concerns, all related social issues popping up in many conversations because they have been longstanding issues in many parts of the province. And I think that us having a comprehensive approach that says, yes, law enforcement does have a role, but healthcare and mental health and direct peer-to-peer outreach and foot patrols also have a really important role to play here.
Can I ask you just briefly, Premier, whether or not you would consider extending things beyond downtown? Yesterday we had someone on from Sage Creek. He said property theft is getting out of control in his neighborhood. The Winnipeg police chief is calling, calls for service map, Winnipeg police rather calls for service map, shows this steep increase in reports of theft in Sage Creek since late 2023. Are you needing to look now at more of a comprehensive across Winnipeg, at least, plan for improving safety somehow?
Yeah, we do. We do. That is the short answer. I've been watching the Sage Creek conversations very carefully. I think that the security camera and security alarm rebate program we've rolled out is going to help. I can tell you that program was fully subscribed immediately. We rolled it out, and Manitobans, within a couple days, had completely used up the spots that we had in that program. So we think that that's an important initiative.
Are you opening more then?
I don't want to scoop myself, but yeah, we're going to continue to be there because this is helping Manitobans, particularly on the property theft and break-in side of things, be able to have some accountability there. But yeah, Sage Creek, South Pembina, West Winnipeg, there are areas where you didn't 10 years ago necessarily think of these same sort of challenges that are now grappling with addictions problems in the public areas that are looking at encampments and things like that.
Are they migrated? the issues.
And for the
of
same
migrating.
reason that, like if downtown is not safe, if a shelter is not safe, then all of a sudden the issues that were once confined to those areas with people moving to other areas, all of a sudden they start to emerge there. So we are going to be looking at that comprehensive approach in terms of reaching out to the different regions. But we're trying to do this also in a staged manner. So let's try it in this targeted area. It works. Okay, now let's expand it.
Okay. We'll leave our conversation there. Thank you very much for being with us this half hour.
Thanks for the time. Really
that is
appreciate
the
it.
Premier of Manitoba, Wab Canoe, in for our regular monthly interview here on CBC Live in studio. Heather Wells, what else is making news?
Well, a Portage la Prairie man wants an apology from RCMP after he was wrongly charged. Scott Joseph Taylor was charged earlier this month with obtaining sexual services from a minor. RCMP charged 6 men in Portage, including Taylor, but 10 days later, the Mounties sent an update saying Taylor was not involved. Taylor says it came too late and his life is ruined. The sentencing hearing for disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard begins today in Toronto. The 82-year-old has been in jail since being arrested in 2020. The Crown is expected to ask for a 3 to 5 year sentence in a federal penitentiary. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
16 mainly sunny in Winnipeg. Heat warning to southwestern Manitoba. Today's high in Winnipeg is 26. Still ahead, we're going to build on our conversation about crime in the city. Do you know the difference between a citizen patrol group and neighborhood watch? Stay tuned.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
You might know Brittany Howard from her Grammy-winning band Alabama Shakes. That band went from playing dingy bars to sharing the stage with the likes of U.S. President Barack Obama. Brittany will be here to talk to you about all of that and why she decided for her new records to strike out on her own. I don't want to confuse you for fulfillment. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Rebecca Zanbergen. Oyster farmers and consumers are worried about a parasite killing the mollusks. Coming up on The Current, we head to PEI, where the parasite has forced a closure of a popular harvesting site.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
Ultimately, I am accountable for any action that happens inside of this camp, and for that matter, I think it was really important to step back.
Bev Priestman, head coach of Canada's women's soccer team, announcing she will not coach the team's first game. 2 members of Canada Soccer are being sent home from the Olympics in Paris. They're accused of using a drone to spy on New Zealand's women's soccer team. One of the people involved is an assistant coach with Canada's women's team. The CBC's Salima Shivji is in Paris and joins me now. Salima, what can you tell us?
Well, Canada's Olympic Committee has done a review on this, and they've announced that there was a drone used to spy on the New Zealand team. The person operating that drone, Joseph Lombardi, is an unaccredited analyst with Canada Soccer. He is off the team and will be sent directly home. He was caught and detained by French police after some New Zealand team members saw a drone flying over their practice 2 days ago. And it turns out a drone was also used to spy on the New Zealand team on July 19th. The assistant coach that Lombardi reports to, Jasmine Mander, is also being kicked off the team and will be sent home. Canada's soccer staff will have to take mandatory ethics training. Now, Canada and New Zealand are set to face off against each other tomorrow in their first match here at the Olympics. And in light of all of this, the head coach, Bev Priestman, has decided to not be on the sidelines for that match. She won't be coaching the team. In a statement, she apologized to the New Zealand team and says that this doesn't reflect the values of Team Canada. And we've also now received a response from the IOC on all of this. It welcomes the fact that Canada's Olympic team has taken swift action to resolve this.
What impact could this have on the team going forward?
Well, it's a blow any way you look at it, right? On the eve of the games just starting, first of all, Priestman won't be coaching that first match now, and all eyes will be on the pitch when the players hit it, obviously Canada versus New Zealand. It could rattle the players, even though many of them are veterans. And Canada is the reigning Olympic champion. They won the gold medal at the Tokyo Games in 2021. They want to defend that title. And this whole thing, spying with drones, regardless of who instigated it, could be a stain on their reputation. And a statement from Canada's Olympic Committee does say the review is ongoing and there could be further action taken if needed.
Thank you, Salima.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Salima Shivji in Paris. A fast-moving wildfire is now burning just 12 kilometers from Jasper, Alberta. The wind is shifting. That is fanning the flames that forced the evacuation of the historic town and the national park. Officials there say 25,000 residents and visitors have left safely. Now it is up to fire crews to protect what's there. Paige Parsons is following this story from Edmonton. Paige, what is the latest?
Parks Canada says their firefighting focus is on limiting growth towards the Jasper town site and protecting critical infrastructure. We know from its latest update that the largest fire is burning south of the town. That's the one that's about 12 kilometers away, and there's another smaller fire threatening the town from the north side. Officials say structure protection crews are in Jasper. They're trying to protect buildings. They're installing sprinklers and hose lines throughout the community. And a big question many had during last night's update was, how did this escalate so quickly and prompt such a sudden evacuation? And what officials said was that it was just 2 hours between the time when the fire started and when it was of such a significant size that it became a concern. They describe it as really aggressive fire behavior, and so that's why everyone had to act so fast.
What is happening with evacuees at this point?
Officials are saying that almost everyone is out of Jasper now, but they are still working on getting all of the hikers that are in the backcountry out of the national park. For people who have already left, many of them made their way to BC and are either now back in Alberta or headed this way. So those thousands of people are trying to find places to stay and get their bearings here. And I think the priority for them will be closely following the updates on what's happening back home. We are expecting another update from Parks Canada on the fire later this morning.
Thank you, Paige.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Paige Parsons in Edmonton. 1 in 3 children and vulnerable adults in New Zealand's care homes were abused. That is the finding from a public inquiry into the country's state and church care. The 3,000-page report details accounts of torture, rape, and sterilization. It says about 200,000 people were subject to abuse between 1950 and 2019. The inquiry also found those from the Indigenous Maori community were especially vulnerable. Moi Apulu Frances Tangala was one of the 2,300 survivors who shared her story with the inquiry.
I suffered from depression at different times. The trauma of the memories of abuse, they live with you just all the time, and you can get triggered by the simplest of things every day.
The report was put forward in New Zealand's Parliament this morning. It includes 138 recommendations. A formal apology to survivors is expected in November. President Joe Biden will address Americans for the first time tonight since ending his re-election campaign. Biden will speak from the Oval Office. We are expecting to hear more about his endorsement of Vice President Kamala Harris. Democratic Party members have been praising Biden's decision to support Harris as the presidential nominee. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
President Joe Biden has made the selfless decision to pass the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris, who is ready, willing, and able to lead us into the future.
Biden's address to the nation begins at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 Pacific. The Bank of Canada is expected to announce a cut in interest rates later this hour. Any drop would be welcome news for some Canadians hoping to buy a home. Senior business reporter Anis Hadari has more.
I mean, it makes a big difference for us personally, and I think same for a lot of people in our generation.
Amy Grimble is in her mid-30s and wants to buy a home. She's just waiting for interest rates to drop again.
For my situation personally, it's the difference between maybe looking at a condo in a different area versus something like my neighbor's house here that is still in my neighborhood that I love so much.
Her wish for a cheaper mortgage will probably come true, at least a bit. Most economists predict the Bank of Canada will drop interest rates by 25 basis points. That's 0.25%. If it happens, the central bank's trend-setting policy rate will be 4.5%.
So I'd agree with the market and with the broad consensus on this.
David Doyle is head of economics with Macquarie Group in Toronto. He expects to see interest rates drop, but not just because inflation is lower than this time last year.
For Bank of Canada, it's no longer just about inflation. I think increasingly there will be concerns about growth, and in particular, the undesirable rise in unemployment.
Many economists expect even more interest rate cuts to come this year, but that's less of a sure bet. If rates are cut today, it'll be the second cut in as many months. Anis Hidari, CBC News, Calgary.
A major Canadian-U.S. border crossing is one step closer to reality. Dignitaries are meeting this afternoon at the halfway mark of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. It connects Windsor, Ontario to Detroit, Michigan. Today's meeting will officially mark the joining of the Canadian and American sides of the bridge. Katie Nicholson has more from Windsor.
I think it will become an icon, one of those postcard moments.
From a lookout in a Windsor park, architect Dorian Moore takes in the towering spires and network of cables of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, reaching across the Detroit River.
To connect both culturally and economically on both sides.
And it almost never happened. Matty Maroon, the billionaire who owned the Ambassador Bridge, the other bridge which has connected Windsor and Detroit for nearly a century, fought tooth and nail against the project.
Dear Mr. President.
He even paid for an ad on Fox and Friends in 2018 asking then-President Trump to stop the Canadian-funded project.
Revoke that presidential permit and let the grand new span be American.
It didn't work. Last month, workers connected the U.S. and Canadian sides of the bridge's deck. Today, community leaders will be allowed to see it for themselves. Rakesh Naidu is the president of the Windsor-Essex Chamber of Commerce. He says the new bridge will be a big economic driver.
This is one of the busiest commercial crossings in North America. About $400 million of goods crosses the border every day. It's a lifeline for Canada.
The bridge isn't slated to open until September of 2025, so today, when Naidu walks the deck straddling two countries, he's looking forward to one thing.
Selfies.
Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. You are on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us. It is Wednesday, July 24th. Someone once told me they lose track of the days in the summer, so I should mention the date more. So there you go. It's hot out this morning already. It is lots of sunshine out there in downtown Winnipeg, or there is rather, and it's 18 degrees at the Forks. We're going to get into what's happening for the rest of the day in a moment. Well, one of the things that's been developing in national news, as you have been hearing on World Report and in other news this morning, is that Canadians women's soccer is having an issue at the Olympic Games. The coach is going to miss the opener. One of the coaches, rather, as well. Two staffers were sent home. There were drone incidents of the team looking at a practice from New Zealand. So we're going to hear more about what the head coach of the team has had to say this morning. Stay tuned for that. Plus, we continue our conversation about safety in Winnipeg and how communities can be proactive. One of the questions we'll ask this half hour is, what is the difference between a citizen patrol group and a neighborhood watch group, and what's been effective in Winnipeg? We're going to talk to someone who's been involved in those groups in the city. Right now, though, let's go to Heather Wells for a news update. Good morning.
Good morning. A Portage La Prairie man says his life is ruined after RCMP wrongfully charged him in a child exploitation case. Scott Joseph Taylor was among 6 men charged. 10 days later, RCMP released an update saying Taylor was not involved at all, and his charges were stayed. But we'll hear what Taylor says has happened to him because of that mistake coming up. As well, it was 1 year ago today, Manitoba's former PC government hired a recruitment firm to bring 150 doctors to this province. In that time, not a single doctor has arrived. NDP Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says it would cost the current government money to cancel that project. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's go to Abby for the forecast. Hi, Abby Adiemi.
Good morning once again. 16 in the city. We're enjoying sunny skies. We'll see that transition to a mix of sun and clouds near the noon period. And we're expecting a breezy day with temperatures reaching 26, though it's going to feel warmer due to the humidity, which will be factored in close to the 30s. A few clouds will roll in tonight, and then the breezy conditions will continue from the south. Now, across the province, we're going to be seeing a mix of sun and clouds, the breezy conditions in some areas. The southern part of the province all hovering between 16 and 17 at the moment, and we'll be seeing highs from 26 to 30, even feeling warmer with the humidity factored in. And don't forget, we have that heat warning in effect for the southeast corner of the province, impacting Dauphin all the way down to Riding Mountain, and temperatures will be getting to 29 degrees, though it's going to be feeling in the range of 38, so you need to take care. But right now, Winnipeg, 16, get set for a hot day. We'll get some sunshine this morning, then a mix of sun and clouds around the noon period, and a high of 26.
All right, thanks, Abby. And I know
You're
you just misspoke there because you're talking about all the areas, the heat warnings for the southwest.
Southwest.
Yeah, no worries. You're quite correct around where it's moving through the Melita, Verdun, Dauphin area. All right, let's get into what's going on in the morning commute. Corey.
Yeah, one issue to keep an eye out for, Weston and Notre Dame. There is a downed traffic light. There was a collision that's knocked down the traffic signals there. It's blocking the eastbound median lane on Weston. So you can imagine there's going to be, eastbound median lane on Notre Dame, So you can imagine there's probably be some backups there with that light standard down. If you have any updates on that, I'd love to hear, how that's impacting traffic and, if the lights are flashing red or not. That's all the details I have from the Winnipeg Traffic Management Center. If you have any more details for me, give me a call on the CBC commuter line and I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, we continue our conversation about safety and crime in Winnipeg this morning. What do you do as a resident if you feel unsafe in your neighborhood? Some residents in a Winnipeg suburb say over the last few weeks they have noticed an uptick in property crime. In the last half hour of Information Radio, the Premier responding to concerns from people in Sage Creek. Garrett Wilkinson is one of those people. He's been directly affected. Last weekend, he shared with us his garage was broken into, his bike was stolen. There was about $4,500 in theft in total of different items. Now, he was with us on the program to share more of what he's been noticing overall in Sage Creek.
4 days ago, someone posted a photo of about 10 different vehicles with their windows smashed. Every single post that goes and has someone declaring that they had to break and enter has people being like, oh, I'm on your block. I had them going through too. They tried to get in. So this is something that's really come up that's becoming a really strong concern, not only for myself, but a lot of the residents of the area. These select individuals who are doing this kind of, they're getting off the hook. There's no real fear of consequence. I think that, accountability, whether it be personal, work life, that's paramount. And I don't really think that these people are really being held accountable, and it's basically become inconsequential. So it's creating habits that they can continue to do it.
So what do you do, as I repose this question, what do you do if you do feel unsafe? Well, for some people like Detlef Hindemith, the answer is easy. Start a neighborhood watch or a patrol group. He is the program administrator with Manitoba Citizens on Patrol program. That's a community safety organization that has been serving communities all across the province, in fact, for over 30 years. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how does Garrett Wilkinson's experience compare to what you've been hearing from your patrol groups? Are there trends that you've been noticing this summer in Winnipeg?
Well, generally the trends, not only in Winnipeg, but right across Manitoba, are that crime is on the increase. And some of that is typical. Summer, there is a higher time for crime, and you see more crimes being committed. And so that's a time where, our members are extra vigilant, get extra patrols out, watch areas more closely, try and focus in problem areas, initiatives like that.
So what is the difference, Detlef, between a citizen patrol group and a neighborhood watch group?
Yeah, they are different, and they're actually very different programs. The Neighborhood Watch group here in Winnipeg is run by the Winnipeg Police Service, and so the Manitoba Citizens on Patrol program is separate, but we're all, crime prevention strategies. So one of the biggest differences is that Manitoba Citizens on Patrol, our members will actually go on a patrol They'll be walking on the streets. They're wearing reflective vests. They're watching for suspicious behavior. They're acting as a deterrent because the criminals see them as well as the regular residents watching. And if they do see something, they'll document it and report it. They can also go out in vehicles. Some communities prefer to use vehicles because of the distance between the homes, and they can get more coverage that way. It really depends on where you are. Both are good. Whereas neighborhood watch, from my understanding, is you're more watching from your residence or your personal property and just being extra vigilant that way if you see something to report it to the law enforcement authorities, as well as they're structured in such a way that they have themselves organized into blocks. And so you would also communicate that information that way.
Some people are now considering forming a citizen patrol group, as I mentioned, in Sage Creek. How do you measure its effectiveness? Like, can you give me an example of where a patrol group is, being effective, like where it works?
Yes, I can. We've had groups in the past. I mean, this program being around for over 33 years now has seen a lot of groups come and go. And some of these groups have started up in the past, and there was high crime in their area, so they were concerned, and they started up, and it helped reduce that crime or even bring it down to very minimal levels. And then the groups slowly dissolved because they felt, well, crime is under control, everything's looking good. There's, we don't need to really be, taking our time anymore to go watching and seeing what's happening, and everything's good. So then, crime starts up again.
I'm just wondering where you're talking about. Like, is that a specific?
So this would be our Grunthal group, actually, who's experienced this. Yeah, they've had several starts during their time with Manitoba Citizens on Patrol, and so they, it lapsed, and that's fine. People lose interest, and everything seems fine, and then crime comes up again. And then so they start up again, and actually that's the situation they're in right now. They've just restarted.
It's interesting because we're doing this series later this summer and into the fall. I think we're actually launching it next week, but we're going to be asking what people want in the next police chief. So we've got a series of interviews. I talked to one of those people this week, and they were bringing up what sort of this comes back to what you're talking about. They actually came from Montreal, and in Montreal they said that their groups like yours, the citizen patrol groups like the groups you're talking about, they actually have offices dedicated in neighborhoods. So it's not sort of, groups will pop up and then leave and it will move around. It will be more dedicated, and I guess it's committed to in a bigger way. Is that something you think that at this moment in Winnipeg might benefit us to have more permanence to these patrol groups?
It certainly wouldn't hurt. I mean, the more communication you have between law enforcement and groups is always a good thing.
If people are witnessing a crime in their neighborhood and then they, want to start a group because they're thinking, maybe it's a way to get ahead of it, how do they even go about beginning a group?
Yeah, so it's very simple. A lot of times what we will do is we'll have a community presentation or a neighborhood presentation, and we'll provide the information to a whole range of people who would be interested in the program. And then from there, they really need to decide if they want to go ahead and pursue forming this group. It's fairly simple steps. I mean, all it takes is a couple of hours a month for each person to contribute to help make your area safer. And if they decide they want to form a group, well, there's a very simple process again. Everybody gets their criminal record check verified, and the fees for that are covered through our program. And then from there, there's a training session so that they know what to watch for, how to document reporting, personal safety, all sorts of range of topics in that training session. It's a short training session, and it's a one-time initial training session. And from there, they get equipped with safety vests, magnetic vehicle signs, reporting notebooks, reflective headwear with our logo on it, and they're ready to patrol. So all it takes is a little bit of initiative from somebody in the neighborhood.
Do you know how many active groups we have right now, Detlef, across Manitoba?
Yes, 40 groups.
40. And how does that compare to past years? I guess it must ebb and flow, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, groups come and go. In past years, they've been as high as 60. That's what the records are telling us. That was going back quite a few years. I don't know how active those groups were at that time. I can't speak to that because that was before my time. But generally, right now, we're seeing groups on the increase. They're starting to come up again. We had a bit of a lapse during the pandemic, just like everything. Being apart and not being able to be close to each other. There was a lapse in groups, but now with the surge in crime, we're seeing all sorts of communities that are asking, what's this program about? How does our neighborhood get involved? What can we do? Can we join the program? And so we're taking steps with them to bring information sessions to their areas. And then from there, of course, they're going to decide whether to start up again or start.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Really appreciate you telling us about it. Is there a website or a Facebook page that's best if people want to get information about it?
Yes, absolutely. It's our website is Citizens on Patrol program, and it's www.citizensonpatrolmb.ca. And there's a ton of information there for people to go through, and there's also contact opportunity with the contact button.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us, Detlef. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That's Detlef Hindemith, the Program Administrator for Manitoba Citizens on Patrol programs.
Paris 2024 opening ceremony. A historic event unlike anything you've ever seen before that will mark the first time it's not held in a stadium but on the Seine River with the Parade of Nations and the lighting of the Olympic flame. Watch the Paris 2024 opening ceremony live Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern on CBC or watch free on CBC Gem.
8:24 is the time right now, and in Winnipeg it is 18 degrees and it's mainly sunny. Well, as you may have been hearing this morning in developing news, there's a dark cloud hovering over Canada's Olympic women's soccer team, and it sounds like this. That's the sound of a drone, and it's involved in a story that involves a member of the Canada soccer support team who's now being detained by French officials. They were allegedly flying a drone over the New Zealand team's practice. 2 staff have been sent home. Head coach Bev Priestman will be sitting out the first game against New Zealand on Thursday. Priestman actually had a press conference about a half hour ago in France. Reporters asked her if she knew anything about this.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I'd like to apologise. I think on behalf of the leader of this programme, I think on behalf of, I'm ultimately accountable. I think that's why it was really important to me, I think, to take this moment to show strong leadership and to represent the values of this country, of the team and of myself. And I think, I've done that because I deeply care about sportsmanship, integrity, and to be honest, the players who were taking the field, I think both teams have worked incredibly hard. The preparation has been for many, many months for this moment. And I did that so that, any sportsmanship or any questions asked of any other individuals could be, removed. But more importantly, I think to show the value of strong leadership and what it means to respect an opponent. So from my perspective, that's my stance. It was really important to me. I offered straight away for my voluntary removal from the game. And again, I would just like to apologise to our country, but also to New Zealand. There's details regarding this moment, but I think and those don't necessarily sit directly with me, but ultimately I am accountable for any action that happens inside of this camp, and for that matter, I think it was really important to step back.
It's everything people are talking about today. How much of a distraction this is to your players, to your team right now?
Yeah, you know what? I've been incredibly impressed by the leadership in this team. We've gone through a leadership evolution. Christine's moved on, but what I will say in the last 24 hours, it's the leadership I've seen on display has been super, super impressive. I've again been open, honest, upfront, and ready to sort of this team is ready. I think that's the important thing. They've been preparing for this game for a long time, and I think we've learned, right? There was a lot of distraction. This isn't new for us, unfortunately, and I think there was some huge lessons in that for the players and for me. And one of those lessons for me personally was leading through a storm, and ultimately my job continues to be up until that game, prepare the team, lead with integrity, and that's exactly why I've chose to take the decision to step back from the game.
So who's gonna be replacing you tomorrow?
Yeah, Andy Spence, my main assistant. You know, Andy's been with me now for a significant amount of time. The way I lead is very like trust and ownership of people in this environment. And, you know, Andy is well heard from the players on the pitch, off the pitch, leading meetings. He's more than capable. You know, he's worked with England, Everton. He's got a significant coaching career. And ultimately, you know, I know this team is ready, irrespective of me, of Andy Spence stood on the sideline. I think I can trust that this group is ready. They know what it means to play for Canada, to take the pitch and go and do what they need to do. And I feel at peace with my decision, but also that this team is ready.
Are you expecting more sanctions again from the IOC or the FIFA? Or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've just literally stepped off the training pitch. I obviously volunteered me to step back before today, but yeah, I'm still learning. I'm straight off the pitch, and you know, whatever it is, again, I can only go on record and apologise on behalf of this team for this country. But this team is ready. Again, leadership moment for me to demonstrate the values. And again, you know, I also want to make sure that this programme doesn't let the COC, the IOC and things down, and being very cooperative in making sure that that wasn't the case. And, you know, again, I'd like to thank them for their support too.
Canada's women's soccer team head coach Bev Priestman speaking to reporters in France. Now, that's just in this past hour. The developing news, if you're just waking this morning, is that the coach, Bev Priestman, is not going to be at the Olympic opener, sitting it out. 2 staffers from the team have also been sent home now from France because of drone incidents, allegedly drone over the New Zealand practice, watching what they were doing last week. So we'll have more throughout the day on this. Right now, speaking of throughout the day, Janet Stewart has popped in, host of Radio Noon, to talk about their call-in at 12:30 today.
Hey, Marcy. We've got Moshe Lander joining us, who is an economist looking at, today we're going to talk about the fashion industry, how it needs to change. And I don't expect anyone out there to have like an absolutely brilliant idea on this. We're just curious. What have you done? Have you done something to change the way you interact with buying clothing? Do you go to thrift stores? Are you somebody who believes in slow fashion? So we'll get local voices on this as well. Plus, we've got Moshe Lander, who's looking at a new Concordia study that came out. And you know what? I also want to know what you think of this soccer business. I'm throwing it out there. We've got, leave us a message, please. Send us a text at 204-588-7355 or send us a voicemail. Leave us a voicemail right now, 204-788-3797, because, you know, this is a talker.
All right. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you.
So, Janet Stewart, of course, the next local show coming up here after ours is off the air is Radio Noon, which she hosts. And this afternoon, the calling conversation about fast fashion between 12:30 and 1. You can leave a message now, 788-3797. On this very hot day, no incidents in traffic. It's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. Sunny, 18 degrees. We're headed to 26 today, and we will see some clouds move in around noon today. A humidex of 32. If you're in parts of western Manitoba, including Dauphin, you're under a heat warning right now. A Portage la Prairie man wants an apology from the RCMP after he was wrongfully charged. Scott Joseph Taylor was charged earlier this month with obtaining the sexual services from a minor. RCMP alleged teenage girls in Portage were being lured and forced to have sex with men in exchange for drugs. They charged 6 men in Portage, including Taylor, but 10 days later, the Mountie sent an update saying Taylor was not involved. Taylor says it came too late and his life is ruined.
I've been threatened by the public. I've had death threats. My house was spray painted, vandalized. Like, in what people would be thinking, it's just been awful.
In a statement to CBC, RCMP say the information they had at the time supported the charges. They said once they learned Taylor was not involved, they quickly moved to stay those charges. Exactly 1 year ago today, Manitoba's former PC government hired a recruitment firm to bring 150 doctors to this province. In that time, not a single doctor has arrived. The province enlisted Canadian Health Labs to recruit the new doctors. Current Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says it would cost the NDP government money to cancel the project. So at least for now, they hope the company delivers some doctors.
It's unfortunate they haven't been able to date, but I also want to make sure we're not throwing, good money after bad. And we're going to continue to assess this agreement while we take real action and real steps to recruit more doctors to Manitoba.
The province doesn't have to pay any money to the firm until doctors start arriving. Grieving a woman who died after being hit by a vehicle on Monday. Dozens gathered near Notre Dame and McPhillips last night, the spot where Loretta Moraine Green was hit. The 32-year-old's mother, Diane Thomas, spoke at the vigil.
My heart just got ripped out of my chest. It hurts. No parent should ever go through what I'm going through.
Thomas says Green was a mother of 6 who loved spending time with her family and cared about everyone she met. Winnipeg police are investigating. A firearms expert in Winnipeg says the growth in 3D printed guns is a serious issue. Winnipeg police say a 25-year-old man was directing the production and trafficking of printed guns from his cell at Stony Mountain Institution. Police say the man used a smuggled cell phone to get components shipped to addresses in Winnipeg. Firearms specialist Dave Brown says people accused of producing guns are often caught when they're ordering parts.
You cannot print a 3D gun. You can only make parts of a gun. You still need the metal parts. You still need the barrel. You still need the slide. You still need the springs, things like that. So that's where a lot of the criminals are being caught when they order the metal parts.
Brown says 3D printed guns don't have serial numbers, meaning they're not traceable. The sentencing hearing for disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard begins today. In November, a Toronto jury found Nygard guilty of 4 counts of sexual assault. As Jamie Strachan reports, the 82-year-old has been in jail ever since his arrest in 2020.
Peter Nygard will undoubtedly spend years behind bars. The question is, how long? The Crown is expected to ask for a 3 to 5 year penitentiary term. Crown attorney Neville Gowala spoke of their ordeal after the verdict.
This is a crime that typically happens in private. To stand up and recount those indignities in a public forum such as a courtroom is never easy.
Nygard's lawyer will argue for a shorter jail term. For years, Nygard was on top of the fashion world. All the while, allegations of sexual misconduct swirled around him. In this case, the assaults happened at Nygard's Toronto headquarters. They stretch back decades and were only recently reported. Jasminder Seiko is the Director of Community Engagement at Victim Services Toronto.
I think that a lot could have been done a lot earlier.
Nygard also faces numerous sex-related charges in Manitoba, Quebec, and New York. Dozens of women are also part of a civil suit in the United States. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
And as we've been hearing this morning, Canada's women's soccer team is mired in an Olympic spying scandal before playing its first match. Coach Bev Priestman has apologized and removed herself from tomorrow's Olympic Games opener against New Zealand. And 2 team staff members were sent home after drones were flown over New Zealand's practice sessions on Monday and last Friday. New Zealand's Olympic Committee alerted police on Monday and registered a complaint with the IOC Integrity Unit asking Canada for a full review. Priestman worked for New Zealand's football team from January 2009 until June 2013. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby and Corey are here with a last look at things. How's the commute, Corey?
Yeah, an eastbound Notre Dame at Weston. There's a down light standard blocking the median lane right in the intersection there. So maybe some big backups for folks heading down eastbound Notre Dame at Weston.
Abby?
Yeah, most regions will be experiencing sunny and warm weather today. Breezy conditions in some parts and mostly clear and partly cloudy in other areas. Winnipeg, beautiful sunny skies we're seeing. We're heading to a high of 26, though it's going to feel like 32. And the northern regions, Churchill and Thompson, are going to be hovering between 28 and 32. For the south, we are just going to stay between 26 and 30.
Now I get to out myself because the show's done. But on YouTube this morning, if you were watching, maybe even on Main Network first hour, I have just been yawning my face off. This return to work plan after vacay is taking its toll. I know that's reflective of a lot of people probably, right? You come back to work, you're like, whoa, what's going on? Thank you guys for listening this morning, each and every morning to Information Radio, for listening, for weighing in, for engaging. And we're back again here tomorrow again. Thanks to everyone who works so hard on the program. You're listening to CBC 89.3.